I am back after a little vacation time last week, back in the saddle, ready to go. Drive with Spence Checketts is the name of the show, and that is my name. Porter is back producing the program, booking the program today, and we appreciate you making the show part of your day today and every day. Happy Monday to you. Happy official start of Utah football training camp to you. It used to be known as Camp Kyle. Not sure if we've branded it as Camp Morgan. That doesn't sound as just sounds a little new, a little odd. 21 years with Coach Witt around here getting fall camp started. And now Coach Witt, of course, lives in Ann Arbor, and Morgan Scalley is the head coach of Utah football. So we're going to get to some Utah football storylines on the show today. BYU will get going coming up on Wednesday, as will Utah State. So Utah gets going today. We're going to have some sound for you from coaches and players up on the Hill. I'll take advantage of this opportunity to remind you that throughout the course of, well, the next, I'd say, 6-7 months, 7-8 months, something like that, until Valentine's Day when football is actually over. If you are looking for any football sound, any Utah football sound, your one-stop shop is ESPN700sports.com. Going to be up on the Hill throughout the course of fall camp and, of course, throughout the course of the season, getting you all the sound from players and coaches and getting you ready for kickoff as Idaho is right around the corner. We're about 4 weeks out officially from the start of college football. And then, obviously, week 0, 4 or 5 weeks out, depending on how you consume the start of the season. And, of course, NFL training camps going on as well. So both pro and college football will start to really take over this space as it pertains to the way we're going to roll on the show. We're going to cover, of course, Utah football, Big 12 football, BYU college football, and all the latest in the NFL storylines. We're your home of football in this market, which has become extremely obvious over the past few months. So keep it here on ESPN 700. Now, that's not the only thing that's going on. Real Salt Lake, 3 road matches since the World Cup break came to an end. 2 losses and 1 draw. Over the weekend, headed to St. Louis, a 1-1 draw after Sergi Solin scored his 7th goal of the season. A uncharacteristic gaffe from the keeper, Rafa Cabral, led to St. Louis's equalizer. And RSL is now back at home for an absolute sprint. 5 home games in 15 days. The Leagues Cup gets going tomorrow. So we'll do some RSL on the program. NBA offseason, more or less, has come to a close. I believe the last day I did the show before leaving for vacation was the day that LeBron announced he was headed to Philly to play for the 76ers. The Jazz have 15 players under contract, and they appear to be done. So not a lot of basketball news as of now. Of course, a lot of excitement for what should be a much improved Jazz basketball team, even though Walker Kessler plays for the LA Lakers. The Major League Baseball trade deadline is about to come and go. The Dodgers looks like the Dodgers are going to buy another World Series. They've won back-to-back World Series, and they got the prize on the market, back-to-back AL Cy Young winner now playing for the Dodgers. So if any news comes down, big news, the Red Sox made a nice deal today. They went 21-4. Last month, so they think they've got something to say about it. But the Major League Baseball trade deadline is about to pass, so we'll let you know if anything comes down. All right, the Utah Royals took care of the Portland Timbers over the weekend, 5-1, which is a Royals NWSL record for goals scored in a single game. So shout out, little love for the ladies playing some really good soccer this year. Shout out to the Utah Royals. All right, good guest list today. Start things off with our buddy Dan Sorensen from Ute Zone. Ute Zone is a great one-stop shop for Utah football and basketball fans to keep up on all the news that you need to know about as it pertains to your favorite college teams. Dan does a really good job. We'll kind of do a comprehensive camp preview with Dan, some storylines to watch out for now that fall camp has arrived. And to me, kind of feels like the official start of the season. We always talk about media days and transfer portal and recruiting news. Well, camp is here. That means football is right around the corner, even though it still feels like it's the Sahara Desert outside. Jason Kreis, president of soccer for both RSL and the Utah Royals, will join us to talk about the latest there. I referenced some sound from up on the Hill, Morgan Scalley and some other coaches and players addressing the media after practice today. We'll bring you some practice sound on the program. And then our friend Amy Donaldson from KSL will join us in studio. So Dan Sorensen, Jason Christ, Morgan Scally, Amy Donaldson, me, Spence Checketts. Back in the saddle. Hello. How are you? All of you, the great listeners. And one-time host of this show for a week, now back in the producer's chair is Porter Larson. Are you glad to be back with the less stressed day-to-day approach?
Yeah. It's good to have you back in studio. And yeah, just doing one job is enough for me, at least for the moment. I don't mind hosting. I like hosting.
No, you're good at it.
But it's a lot. And to be honest, if I'm hosting, let's get some football and basketball to talk about outside of some off-season stuff.
You're not breaking down the Royals while I was gone?
A little bit. Just to be clear, we did give some coverage. Trey came on and we did the soccer thing. It's just, and I don't pretend to be a expert on some of those other sports. So when it comes down to it, football, hoops, golf, I can do those pretty well. We get into talking soccer. If you know what you're talking about, you can probably tell pretty quickly that I'm doing my best. But, storylines and such, fine. Schematics, no.
A little trade secret for you, young fella. You just fake it. That's all you do. Okay.
Many do.
You think I can really break down 4-2-3-1 versus 5-3-5 or whatever the hell that means? You just fake it. And the listeners at some point either find you out or just get used to you, and then you're good.
And this is fair. But you've seen plenty more soccer than I. Up close.
This is true. Is there a highlight or two that I may have missed while I was gone?
We buckled up.
That's always good to buckle up with Bowler.
Bowler was in studio with me.
Love that.
On a Wednesday. That's probably my favorite part of the week was sitting down for an entire show with a guy who, he can go everywhere, but just has as much of a perspective on this market and the Jazz and the offseason and otherwise than really about anyone. And college football stuff as well. Yeah. I mean, Bowler called how many college football games?
For years, college and pro football.
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
Most people around here don't know that Craig was like 2 retirements away from being CBS's main college football voice.
Did doing NFL stuff at some point.
Just all about timing. Couple pieces of business. Is it Camp Scally? Is that what we landed on?
Yes. I think as far as the branding goes.
Okay. And then number 2, did you send me an email while I was away?
I didn't.
Okay.
I don't think.
Well, I just opened up my email.
Got a few of them?
Got some work to do. But it's good to be back. Shout out to Porter for holding the fort down, and thank you for giving him your ears. No vacations anytime soon for your guy, so back in the saddle, back in the seat. Dan Sorensen will join us right out of the gates today to talk some Utah football. But before Dan stops by, courtesy of our friends at Game Day Men's Health, it's time now for your opening tip. I want to let you know that Camp Scally is underway for Utah football. For the best coverage of Utes fall camp, keep it tuned to OC and The Drive every day. And visit ESPN700sports.com. Camp Scally is brought to you by CenXL, JBR, Beer Bar, Citron Cooperman, and your Toyota dealers on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, couple things here. First of all, I do want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. They sponsor this segment. And right before vacation, went into game day, had my levels done, sat down with me, and we had some adjustments to make, which is fine. It's part of their process. Now, if you have not taken advantage of their deal, that's step number 1. Okay, so right now, if you're at work, streaming us online, driving around town, if you have your cell phone, wait till you're at a stoplight and pull up your internet browser and go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. While you're there, you're going to schedule your free consultation. As I say every day, just do that. If you don't do anything else, you should absolutely do that for 2 reasons. A, it's free, and B, it takes 30 minutes out of your day. So the free consultation, they're going to sit with you. They're going to take some blood. Then they're going to go over your levels with you. And if you're trying to get back in shape, if you've been trying and it's not working, if you feel like you need to lose a lot of weight and you've been trying and you're not getting a lot of progress, I can just tell you that this month will mark 3 years since I started working with them. They helped me get in the best shape of my life, and they've helped me maintain it, which is the most important thing. You can always do the fad diet or some aggressive workout regimen, and then suddenly you're in shape, and then you lose it, right? We've all done that. So their program is something they'll go over with you, but here's the kicker. If you decide to go through with it, because of them being a client on the show, they're offering you 50% off your entire year of membership. So it's not like a 5% discount or a 10% discount. This is 50% off. It's the same deal they give me, which makes it make sense because ultimately these are expensive things that in the past have been for high-level athletes, celebrities trying to get ready for movies. Okay, so I use their testosterone supplementation and some peptides. They've got trizipatide, semaglutide, all the tides, right? If you want to lose weight, they got all that stuff. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now, GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Free consultation. Tell them you heard me talking about it. They're going to knock 50% off the deal. All right. So I was talking about this with Sean during Crosstalk today. Of course, today marks day one of fall camp for Utah football. Now, every year, if you listen to this show, first of all, thank you. Hello, how are you? I view this day as like the unofficial / official start of college football season. Now, college football moves the needle in this market and across the landscape of the country that you can make an argument that media day might, or when the transfer portal opens or closes, or when the recruiting class is down. No, for me, it's fall camp, okay? The team that we have here is going to be the team that will start the year. Now, there was a ruling in Colorado over the weekend giving the 2022 high school class a fifth year of eligibility. I was kind of digging around a little bit today. Nakari Rogers is a name that's out there, is a guy that might have an extra year of eligibility. I feel like Wayshawn has kind of established himself as RB1, Daniel Bray in the mix as well. But if Nakari Rogers wants to come back, maybe there's something there. I don't know that ruling is going to affect either Utah or BYU. BYU football, I should say. BYU basketball has a couple of interesting names and now have an extra year of eligibility. Richie Saunders has not signed his NBA contract with Memphis. Keba Keita played with the Pacers Summer League team. There's no Utah basketball players that would be affected by this, at least as far as I can understand. But that was kind of an interesting ruling. But sorry for the non sequitur. The bottom line is, to me, what we're seeing today at Ute practice with this team is most likely going to be the group that we're going to see when Idaho rolls in on September the 3rd for the season opener at 7 o'clock at Rice-Eccles Stadium. That game can be heard, of course, right here on ESPN 700. Reminder, Porter will have your pregame coverage all year. Then, of course, Bill Riley, voice of the Utes, will be calling all of these games. But I was thinking about this morning as I was kind of re-emerging into the world after a week off. When I take time off, I disconnect. I don't have my phone on me very much. I'm not really checking the news cycle. So kind of drinking through a fire hose, I recorded Big Ten Media Days because I wanted to hear Whit and, just kind of going back at some of the topics that are pertinent to Utah football and college football. We just experienced potentially the craziest, most dramatic college football offseason media cycle in the history of our state. And I'm not being hyperbolic. You go back to December of last year when the rumors start to surface that maybe Whit is done and maybe he is not going to come back and coach Utah. And behind the scenes is Morgan kind of getting antsy, like, coach and waiting 4 or 5 years now. Can we do this thing? What do the powerful money people want? What do the donors and boosters want? Are they ready for Morgan? Are they tired of Kyle? And then Kyle gives that press conference that will go down in infamy, saying that he is now in the transfer portal and he doesn't want to wear out his welcome. And with the way he spoke that day, everyone's antennas went up. So you start hearing from people, right? As the home of the Utes and somebody who went to school there and has relationships in both the administration and the athletic department, you start hearing from people. You got to be careful in this seat. Are you being used to further? Honestly, it doesn't matter who your coach is. It doesn't matter what your infrastructure is. If you don't have the ability to keep up with paying the players to come play for your school, you don't have to be the highest spender, but if you're not in that ecosystem, you're in big trouble. That's just the reality of this. Whit talked about this every time there was a microphone in front of his face. He talked about this during Big Ten Media Days. He was not necessarily bragging about Michigan's resources, but every time he's interviewed, he leans into that. Now, one of the things I've liked about Morgan is every time he is interviewed, and I had him on my podcast. Sean had him on the show. Interviewed him for about 20 minutes during Big 12 Media Days. We can talk about the culture, and we can talk about the relentless, smart, nasty ball hawks, that stuff. We can talk about all that, okay? At the end of the day, if you don't win football games, it doesn't matter what your cool acronym is. It doesn't matter what your day-to-day messaging is about how hard you're working. and your strength and conditioning coach and the cohesion in your, it doesn't matter if you're not winning games. And that Morgan knows that. And he talks about it whenever he's interviewed. So you get into all the culture stuff, you get into all the messaging, but he always ends with it. Now we have to go win. And if Utah football goes and wins football games, I am confident that there are people in this community that will step up and donate and support and make sure Utah athletics is where it needs to be. And obviously we have covered in this space extensively what the ramifications of a Ocho Capital private equity deal could be, good and bad. And we don't know yet, and that's fine. And look, the bottom line with Utah football is we don't know yet, and that's fine. Listening to a lot of things this morning, reading a lot of things throughout the day, a lot of very high expectations / pretty audacious predictions are being thrown out there for a group of players that have never done this before and a group of coaches that have never done this before on this level in these seats. Colton Swan was a DC, but it was at Weber, respectfully. Now he's a defensive coordinator in the Big 12 for Utah. Morgan has never been a head coach. Kevin McGiven has a bunch of experience, but he was at Utah State last year. It's a Big 12 job this year. There are some knowns. There's the Devin Dampier story. We know who he is. We know who Bert Ficklin is. We know who Wayshawn Parker is. We know who a lot of these players are, and that's great. We don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. We're waiting for the defensive tackles to kind of settle in. Remember, this was a team that finished, I believe, 8th last year in the Big 12 in rush defense. That's not good enough. So you hear the moniker like, you never worry about a Utah defense. I do. I watched the games last year. It has to be better. It has to be better this year if this is a team that come late November, right, December, in the mix to play in the Big 12 championship, which is what we all hope for. But the bottom line is that we don't know right now, and that's okay. It's August 3rd. It's the first day of training camp, but I'm juiced for this season. I believe Morgan is the man for this moment. And again, ESPN700sports.com is where you go for all of your Ute football sound. Tune in to Sean and keep your radio dialed right here to The Drive with Spence Checketts. We'll catch a break. Dan Sorensen is our first guest coming up next on ESPN 700. I'll tell you about my friends at IFA Country Stores. Now, like any good coach, it's time to update the game plan for a healthy green lawn. As the hot weather continues this month, make sure you're using IFA's Step 3 Spring and Summer Lawn Food for healthy turf that stays green every season. IFA Step 3 Lawn Food is the ultimate lawn owner power move. More can be found online at ifa.coop. Camp Scally, that's right, 21 years of Camp Kyle, now in the rear view mirror. Utah football getting ready for the start of the season. Welcoming in our buddy Dan Sorensen from Ute Zone on a Monday afternoon. What's going on, Dan? How are you, man?
Living the dream. Football is back. I mean, well, no, I guess not for everybody, but at least for the media, we can watch the guys walk off the practice field before we talk to them. And that game against Idaho in Rice-Eccles Stadium will be here before we know it.
Well, I was talking about this during the Open. I've always viewed the first day of training camp really as, okay, finally this thing is back. I mean, we talk about media days, we talk about transfer portal windows or recruiting rankings or what have you. To me, the first day of fall camp means this thing is going for real. That's where I'm at with it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. And look, we don't get a chance to observe practices, and that's been the case for several years now. And so not the biggest deal in the world, but it is nice to be able to be there and to stand on that field, and you can see the guys coming off and you know who's there. You know guys have been putting in work. You can definitely see some physical differences in some of these guys and what they've been doing over the last 8 to 12 weeks. And yeah, it's definitely here and it's coming. And I think that the only people that might be more excited for this thing are the ones that actually get to strap on the helmets and the pads and go out and play. But this is a team that really feels like they've been putting in a lot of work. There's a lot of confidence there, and they're looking to make a statement in terms of what kind of program they're going to be under Morgan Scally.
So I wondered, and if you don't have anything on this, we can move off of it really quickly, but a judge in Colorado over the weekend has granted a 5th year of eligibility for the high school class of 2022. You had to finish this last spring. It's the 5-and-5 eligibility ruling that a lot of people are talking about. Could this affect Utah football in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I think that we may see one or two additions to the roster that aren't currently on the roster. And Coach Scally did say something brief about that in the scrum with the media about there might be some additions, and I don't know if it's going to be directly related to that or something else, guys that are still available via transfer portal or late additions from the 2026 class or anything like that. But I do think that the roster is not entirely locked. It is kind of an interesting and strange time, in all honesty, for college athletics. Yes, the 5-for-5 rule, and there's a lot of that makes sense about it. There's no way that the NCAA can implement a new rule like that with eligibility without making a mess in one way or another, and especially in the era of NIL, there are guys that are going to want to be able to get on a roster to make anything, especially guys that don't have an opportunity to play in the NFL or the CFL. And so I don't know exactly what that's going to do for Utah, if anything, but we did anticipate that there was going to be a little bit of a mess, and there's going to be some interesting things to happen at the end of this season. One of the things that we do at Ute Zone that we love to do every year is a senior feature, and where we go and do an in-depth feature on all of the seniors of the team, and I can't really tell you who's a senior and who's not, because there's going to be several guys that, they're the small handful that are going to run out of eligibility no matter what, but there are a handful of guys that could potentially get an extra year. Devin Dampier is one of them, and it's going to be really interesting to see what all of that looks like when the dust settles, what the courts are able to do for certain individual players or groups of players, and how schools manage their rosters, because a vast majority of schools right now their rosters are locked in. They know what they've got, and they're going to go with it and get ready for the year.
So I was off last week, and in preparation for the show today, I was just doing a bunch of catch up because whenever I take vacation, I'm not married to my phone. I try to just kind of be with family and just kind of peel away from the entire thing. But one of the things I did is I recorded Big 12 Media Days because I wanted to hear what Whit had to say for the first time at Media Days as the head coach of Michigan. And it just kind of it made me think, Dan, before we move on to your expectations of camp this year and some storylines that you're looking for. It just brought me down kind of this wormhole of what an insane offseason we just experienced, in my estimation, maybe even unprecedented in the sports media ecosystem in the state. Because, you guys wrote a great piece about December of last year and how the rumors started circulating, and was this finally it? Is Morgan kind of getting antsy behind the scenes? Are people ready for Whit to move on? And then boom, within a matter of days, it was official, and Kyle gave that media availability where he said, I guess I'm in the transfer portal, and then Sharon Moore fumbles in spectacular fashion, and he's out of a job, and with bigger fish to fry than just that, and suddenly Whit's in Ann Arbor, Morgan's coaching the bowl game, Kalani dances with Penn State, but moves back home with the bride of BYU, and so he stays home. All these players with chances to transfer, some do. Jay Hill leaves, Jim Harding leaves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now we're about to enter the season where we'll get the answers to the questions that we've all had based off of what a crazy offseason we all just experienced. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, you're absolutely correct in the sense that it was as bonkers an off-season as we've ever seen. And look, there was a lot of wildness that went on when Urban Meyer left and Kyle Whittingham was faced with whether he was going to go to BYU and take that job, whether he was going to take the Utah job. But even at that time, look, message boards, which is what the heart of what Ute Zone is we're the largest online message boards community for Utah fans. Like, those were in their infancy. There was no Twitter. Social media wasn't really a thing when that happened. So even when there were crazy things going on way back then, it didn't feel that way. But yeah, who would have guessed that had Sharon Moore taken his marriage vows a little bit more seriously, that the dominoes wouldn't have fallen so John Henry Daly isn't the starting defensive end for the Michigan Wolverines when the season opens up. And just so all of these weird just turns of events that happened over and over again. And yeah, it is surreal to see Kyle Whittingham in the maize and blue. And the things that he's saying aren't necessarily any much different than what we heard while he was at Utah. And now Michigan fans get to get that flavor of football and that flavor of media relations, and hopefully they enjoy it because that's what they're getting. But yeah, it's been so strange. And on the Utah side of things, where Morgan Scalley, I think that he's handled things so adeptly in terms of building a staff, building a philosophy when it comes to recruiting, hiring a GM in Joe D'Orazio, and a recruiting staff led by Mason Yellico and those guys they're changing the way that they're scouting, they're changing their approach to NIL, the emphasis on culture, and we heard it again today, and we heard it every single day of spring football. We heard it all through Big 12 Media Days. We heard it again today. Culture, and it's really that cornerstone on which Morgan is building this team. But look, I don't think that if you'd have asked 2 years ago. Or told me 2 years ago that Morgan Scalley is going to be in his first year as head coach at Utah football, that wouldn't have been a surprise in any way, shape, or form. But the way that it went about, the different coaches that are on the staff, it's as wild a thing as I've ever seen, and it makes me wonder, how much more. There was a lot of media drama that went on right before spring football. It makes me wonder if we're done with that, if there's not going to be more. In terms of some of the shadow that Kyle Whittingham still casts over the state of Utah. But I do think that the people that are in the program they're very eager to get past it, to get games going so that they can show what they've built and what they're building and what that looks like. But it's a memorable off season. It's a weird one. There's probably going to be a book written about it someday. Maybe I'll write it. I don't know. But it's been one for the ages. And frankly, I couldn't be more excited for real football starting. So I'm done with days of our lives. Let's watch what happens on the field.
Yeah, and that's what makes this fun, right? The unknown about what we could see, and for all of the prognostications. I was listening to some college football stuff earlier. There are no Big 12 teams that are considered in the mix to win a national championship. Like the top 7 teams with prediction odds and Vegas odds, they're all in the Big 10 of the SEC. That includes Tech and includes BYU. And while we were down at Media Days, the coaches voted BYU as the team most likely to win the Big 12, while Tech continues to be the favorite in the prediction market space and the Vegas odds space. And I would imagine if you're Morgan, and I know Kyle was like this a little bit, you don't mind that, right? Like you don't mind being the team with a bunch of questions, and maybe you can use that as motivation for your players as opposed to being one of the favorites to win the thing,
Oh, absolutely. And look, that was Kyle's calling card for years, right? Was being able to have a chip on the shoulder and people looking past them. And then they show up and with a tough as nails team and they punch somebody in the mouth. And more often than not, they went down when they got punched. And so I think that there's definitely an element of that in what Morgan is doing. And you're hearing it even a little bit from the players. Al Harrison today after practice. So he's going to be the starting center for the University of Utah this year. And he's one of the leaders, especially on the offensive line. And he talked about over the summer looking up something where they were listing the top 50 offensive lines in college football, and Utah was not one of them. And he's like, yeah, it makes us mad. And it makes us want to prove people wrong. And I think that there are a lot of guys on this squad that feel that way. I mean, people are excited for Dampier and what he can do. And there's been a lot of talk about the revamped wide receiver room and what can happen there. But even the guys that we expect to be stars, Wayshawn Parker, he's put a lot of work in, and he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He's just shy of 1,000 yards last year. He wants to hit it this year. The offensive line, certainly, I think to a man, wants to prove that they're not just chopped liver, even though that line last year was so great and deserving of all the accolades, that these guys feel like they deserve some respect at least, and they're not getting it. And so they're pushing for it. You're seeing a lot of that on the defensive side of the ball as well, whether it's at the safety position or at linebacker or defensive end, defensive tackle. Across the board. There are some pretty fierce position battles going on, and these guys they've got something to say and something to prove. And I think that Coach Scally, he knows it, and he's going to leverage it and use it. And it's not going to be the only thing. If you're the kind of guy that needs that kind of thing to get you motivated, I don't think you're going to be a great fit at the University of Utah, especially playing for Morgan Scally, but it's definitely going to be an ingredient, and Morgan is going to help fuel that and push these guys to get better and better. And when you look at the polls, of course BYU is going to be one of the favorites. That they've got a really good football team down there, and Kalani's done a great job with what he's done with that squad. And they got the reigning offensive player of the year coming back. They've got a quarterback that people know and think is going to get better as a sophomore. They've got a few weaknesses in that team as well, and their depth, I think, is one of them. They need to stay healthy if they're going to be able to contend for that spot. And Tech, of course, is the most talented team that money can buy in the Big 12. But Utah feels like they can be right there with those guys, and maybe even better than those guys. And they're going to hopefully have the chance to, certainly against BYU, they're going to be able to line up and prove it, and they're going to hope to have the chance against Texas Tech and line up across from them and prove it as well. But there's a motivation there. It's not the sole motivation, but it's definitely a factor, and especially when things get really rough in 2 weeks, it's that grind to fall camp, and you're hitting the wall, and you just can't wait to hit somebody that's in a different colored jersey than what you've been able to see all fall camp. I think that type of thing is going to kick in and help these guys.
Here's how I'll phrase the question, because one of the things, and I've talked about this over the past few weeks or so leading up to the start of fall camp, I'm very comfortable approaching the season with a mindset of curiosity and being able to be comfortable saying, I don't know. I mean, it's the number one. I was just with 100 family members last week for our annual thing, and that everyone wants to know, how is Utah football going to be this year? I don't know. I have reasons for optimism, and I believe Morgan's the man for this moment. And, getting not just Devin, but Bird back and Wayshawn, and we could keep going. I mean, there's several things that should lead us to approach this with optimism, but I would be lying to my listeners if I told you I knew exactly how this thing was going to go. And this sport has always been, in my estimation, the most difficult to predict year in and year out, and even more so now because of the ability to rebuild in one off season. No one had Indiana winning the national championship a year ago. So the way I'll ask you, Dan, is what do you feel like you know about this Utah team, and what do you feel like you don't know?
Yeah, what I do know is that there is some massive buy-in from top to bottom. When these guys, they just keep talking about culture and RSNB and the work ethic and that sort of thing. And you could even see it with guys walking off the field. There were 2 or 3 guys that I noticed that were noticeably bigger than they were when we last saw them in spring football. And so that tells me that these guys are buying into what these coaches are asking them to do. At the end of the spring, Morgan Scalley, he talked about how important the month of May was going to be, especially because the players were basically on their own in terms of what they did with their workouts and their bodies, what they did and how they slept, how they studied things, those types of things. And of course, they went into the summer conditioning program over June and July, and a lot of guys made a lot of big gains in that, but it feels like there's a lot of buy-in and there's a lot of belief, and we know that. We know that receiver room is deep. We know that Devin Dampier was hurt all year, so we still haven't seen the real 100% Dev. And so but there's a lot to like about that quarterback room in Dev and in Bird Ficklin. And then beyond that, we know that there are several position groups that have a lot of talent. And there are going to be some pretty fierce battles when it comes to who's going to see the reps on the field. And that's at D end, at D tackle, linebacker to an extent, safety for sure, cornerback for sure, wide receiver for sure, offensive line for sure, a little bit at the tight end. So it's less, I think that under most circumstances, when you see a team where there are so many position battles that still need to be settled, that can make people nervous. But I do think that there's enough talent there that it's a good thing, not a bad thing. It's not like there's nobody stepping up. Now, if we're talking about this in 3 weeks where they still don't know, that might be an issue. But I do think that there is a lot of talent on this roster, and there's an opportunity for it to gel and turn into a pretty special football team. They've got to do it. Like, they've got to take it into their own hands and decide that this is my time and my year, and I'm going to work together with the guy next to me, and we're going to become something greater than each of our individual parts. And that's the big unknown. That's unknown. That we don't know whether they're going to do that. We don't know what's going to happen when adversity hits, and it's going to hit, and probably pretty early. And so it can go a lot of different ways. I personally believe that this is going to be a pretty good football team as long as they don't screw it up. But there's a lot that's going to happen between now and November, and that buy-in and that level of buy-in that we saw in the spring and that we're seeing now, that has to be there week in and week out until the season is done. And if somebody falters and the wrong guy falters, the whole thing could be coming down.
Fans love newcomers. Fans love the shiny new toy, whether it's a recruit or a transfer portal addition. I want one name, Dan, on both sides of the ball that you're most excited about.
Wow. On offense, Braden Pagan, the BP, the wide receiver out of Utah State, I think that he's got a chance to be really special. He knows the offense really well. He spent a lot of time working with Devin Dampier over the summer. He's one of the guys that we talked to after practice today, and I think there's good reason for that. He's going to be a leader on offense. I don't know that he's going to put up 1,000 yards. I think that there are too many guys that are going to demand the ball to get that, but he's definitely a guy that I'm excited about. On defense, oh man, there are a lot of guys or places that this could go, but I'm probably going to go a little out of left field, and Jai Moe, the defensive tackle, he's a sophomore. He played last year as a true freshman at San Jose State. He was one of the toughest guys to block in spring. Anytime you'd have to ask an offensive line who's hard to block, Moe is a guy that came up more often than not. And I don't know that he's going to start. I know that he's going to be in the rotation at some point, but he's going to be a guy where fans are going to see him and be like, who is that guy? And he's a little undersized. But he's explosive, and he's going to be a lot of fun. And I think that he's going to be a difference maker in year one as a Ute.
You feel like you can name the offensive line, the starting offensive linemen? Do you feel like you know who they are?
I think we're pretty close. I think that the top 8 I'm pretty comfortable with. If you were going to twist my arm and say, well, who is the starter tomorrow? I'd say at left tackle it would be Zerway Williams. At left guard, it's probably going to be Toa Mo'iai, although Kelvin Obat's going to give him everything he can handle in terms of a battle. Big Al Harrison at center. Super Keith Olson at right guard. And then at right tackle, I think it's going to be Ike Garcia. And once again, Cedric Jefferson, the transfer out of Montana State, going to give him everything that he can handle in that position battle as well. But hearing a lot of great things about Ike Garcia over the summer, and if he can be healthy, look, he came to Utah as a highly touted 4-star guy. He's had a lot of injuries the last couple of years, but he's got the talent. He's got the mindset. He's had a great summer. I've heard great things about what he's done with his body, but I think that'll be the starting 5, and I think you'll see a lot of Jefferson and a lot of Obat being rotated in. There are a couple of other guys that are going to be pushing for things. Roger Alderman is one. We saw him a little bit last year, and I think that his role will be increased. And so that top 8, I think, is pretty solid. It's just a matter of who's going to win those starting spots. And people might be surprised to hear that Kelvin Obat's not one of my choices. But look, 5 stars or not, it's really tough for a true freshman to get in and see the field on day one as a starter. And he's done everything that Utah's asked of him. The fact that he's in there and he's battling, he's got all the talent in the world. And I think that we're going to see a lot of him this fall. Just don't know that he's going to be ready to start out of the gate. And it would be great if he proves me wrong. I think that would be a really good thing.
All right, Dan, before I set you loose, I'm going to ask you a question that admittedly is against the spirit of this radio show, because I often say I'm a results over vibes guy, because the youngs like the vibes. They want to talk about, everyone wants to talk about the vibes. Are they immaculate? All the things the youngs like to say. Last year, the vibes around the Jazz were awesome. Okay, you won 18 games, so congrats on your vibes. But we don't have results in front of us yet. So as you've been around the team, as you've been around the program, as you've been around the coaches, as you've been around the players, what feels maybe different, refreshing? 21 years with Whit here, year one, Morgan. What's just the feel around the group?
Yeah, in spring football, and look, and I agree with you. Yeah, a vibe is not going to fill your trophy room. And If it does, it's going to be a pretty lame trophy room. But the spring football we had all the good vibes in the world. Guys were having fun. They were loose. They were bought in. They were playing together. They were doing all of the things that you would expect that to be. Today, look, and it's only one day, and people were excited, and they were happy to be back on that field. I didn't catch the loose, have fun kind of vibe. It was very much more of a, all right, it's time to get down to business kind of a thing. And so that's where I think that they're at now. They talk culture all day long, culture, RSNB, and Morgan talked about the need for guys to show just how relentless they are. And when he's talking about relentless, it's not just about playing hard and running around on the practice field. It's about how relentless are you in the film room? How relentless are you with your nutrition schedule and your sleep schedule and your recovery and the weight room and all of those things? And so I did sense a subtle shift from the good times, new era of Utah football, boy, this is fun, to it's time to get down to business and time to go win some football games. And if I'm a Utah fan, that's exactly what I want to see. Yes, they need to be loose. Yes, they need to go to battle for one another. Yes, they need to be tight and have that brotherhood, because the best Utah teams always have that kind of thing. But there also needs to be that seriousness where we're going to step up across from you, where you're going to punch you in the mouth, and you're going to feel it after you play us, and you're going to be on the losing side of that scoreboard one way or the other. And that's what we need to see out of this team. And I think we're going to see more of it as fall rolls on.
Dan, where can people go get all the good work at UteZone?
UteZone.com. It's the place to be. We've got a massive online community, some amazing content coming up. And hey, if you sign up today, if you haven't, 50% off an annual subscription. We got that running the next couple of weeks. So it's come join us. We're having fun. Hashtag Team Fun is the motto of the site, and it's what we're all about.
Dan, you're the man. Appreciate the time. Have a great week and a happy fall camp. All right.
Same to you. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Dan Sorensen from UteZone. He stole our show's hashtag. UteZone stole our show's hashtag.
Team Fun?
Isn't that our hashtag?
I don't know.
I'm a fun guy, Porter.
I do know that UteZone's been using it for a while. I didn't know that was our branding. Sorry.
Get on board. You can say whatever you want about me, but I'll tell you one thing you can't say, that I'm not fun. I'm a fun guy.
Usually.
Hashtag Team Fun. All right, we'll catch a break. Jason Christ joins us coming up next, president of soccer for Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals. We're going to let you hear from the head coach of the Utes, Morgan Scally, later on. Our friend Amy Donaldson joins us. Busy Monday show. Good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Major League Baseball trade deadline will come and go today. A lot of big moves made in the scope of the world of baseball, the ecosystem of baseball. Utah has opened training camp, Utah football day one of fall camp. We're about 31 days away from game day. RSL is back from their World Cup break. We've got 3 road matches with a point earned over the weekend, and now we look ahead to a busy home slate. The Utah Royals continue to play some really good soccer. The president of soccer for both the Royals and Real Salt Lake is Jason Kreis, who joins us on a Monday afternoon. Happy Monday, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate the time. So let's just start with a little kind of education about Leagues Cup. Kind of give us some background, how this kind of came about, and your hopes for this tournament with your team.
Well, I think there's been a sort of a long-standing relationship between the two leagues, the Mexican First Division and our First Division in MLS. And for a long time, there's been, I think, probably a bit of jealousy, I would say, from Major League Soccer's point of view, that Liga MX was almost seen as a league of choice for players coming from South America. It has been a league that we've kind of looked at and compared ourselves to for a long time. And so a few years back, they've started this tournament in an effort to kind of do that, to say, okay, let's compare ourselves side by side in a tournament in the middle of our season, and see how that shakes out. And so I think it's been a really interesting idea. It's been a very competitive tournament. And for the most part, I feel like everybody that's involved with it really enjoys the competition.
What's at stake, Jay? Like, should you guys show well or go on and win the thing? What's the reward?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it's just a cup, right? It's a big tournament with 36 top-level teams through Mexico and the U.S. and North America, I should say. And so there's an opportunity to kind of say we're the best in the region here, but also there's a financial consideration that there is a fairly hefty amount of money that's on the line here for the winner.
Okay, so before we look forward and talk about the matches ahead, of course, since you and I last spoke, we've seen 3 matches from your side since you came back from the World Cup break, all 3 on the road. And, you know, a couple of years back, the RSL kind of road warriors, and that just hasn't been the case so far this year. So before we get into specifics in a vacuum, your thoughts on the 3 matches, what you've liked, what you haven't liked since you guys have been back from the World Cup break.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about all 3 because I think it was 3 really different games for us. And it's very easy to sort of put them all into the same bucket and say, wow, we continue to have road woes. So what's, I think, more difficult, more useful is to actually analyze the games individually. I think the LAFC game, we all know what they're about, right? I mean, this is a team that is unbelievably dangerous in offensive transition. We started out the game extremely well, and I would say that for the 90 minutes, I was really pleased with the way our team played. We controlled a match away against a very, very good opponent. We created many more goal-scoring chances than they did, but they just hit us on the break twice with some incredibly talented players in Sun and Buonga. And that just, as you know, you got to score goals, got to score more goals than your opponent, and they did that to us in that game. But I even think walking away from it, some of the feedback we got from some of their people, mainly their president of soccer operations, said, you know, you guys have a very good team and outplayed us today, but we have 2 very special players. So walked away from that game with a lot of positive feelings, and then went to Portland, and again, extremely difficult place to play, coming off of firing their head coach a few weeks ago, and so I think they're in a really solid bounce back moment. They played really well. I thought we played really well up until Morgan Guiavogi picks up the red card, and then the game just completely changes. And we have to defend for our lives. And we did that for a long stretch very well, but gave up 2 set piece goals on corner kicks. And so we walk away from that a bit unhappy with set piece organization and taking a real look at ourselves about how we're doing and what's our responsibilities and how we're coaching those. So we hit that pretty hard this week. And then we go to St. Louis, again, another team that has shown a huge bounce back after having a new coach, has played really well since the break. I think they're a very good team from what I saw. And we played 45 minutes of probably the worst soccer we played all season. I think we recovered pretty well and responded pretty well in the second half to score the goal to take the lead. And then we have a mistake by one of our most experienced players that probably makes that once every 2 to 3 years. So unfortunate that we walk out of that game with only a point. But all in all, I think there's enough positive there to tell me that I think that we're going to be just fine.
So when it comes to results on the road, I mean, kind of the old saying in this league, at least as I understand it, is you just win your home games and go get some draws on the road, and things are going to work out. But you guys have been so dominant at home, but only one win all year on the road. What do you most attribute that to?
I don't know, to be honest, Spence. I think, if we think about even our defending, our ability to defend, where we're really hurting ourselves is just in these key moments. It's not like I don't think that we structurally have a problem. I don't think that we're giving away just a ton of goal scoring chances. But I do think the ones that we are giving away and the goals that we are giving away are coming just at some really inopportune moments and due to I think a little bit of lack of focus and a lack of attention to some details. So, I think unfortunately when you do that on the road, oftentimes you're behind the eight ball and now you're going to suffer a loss. Our approach to the road games is no different than it has been over the past couple of years. We're not going there with some sort of effort to try to gain a draw. I think we're going there with the mindset that we can impose ourselves and we can win the game. And then a fallback position from that would be to draw, which is what we saw at St. Louis.
Narratives are created by results in this business, as you know. And so I'll just ask you, are you concerned in a way right now that maybe you haven't been all year? Is there a part of you that's not pleased with the way the group came back after the break?
No, again, this is where we look more at the performance than we do at the results. It's the same when we win. We don't get overly excited and think we're the best team in the world when we win 3 games in a row. So we tend to stay a little bit more level-minded and look at the performances. And I would say the performances went from really good and losing to pretty darn good and losing against Portland to a really mixed affair and drawing. So, again, I think there's enough positives that none of us feel like it's time to hit the panic button on anything.
You referenced the gaffe by Rafa, and look, I mean, he has built-in equity where if he's going to make a mistake, as you said, maybe once every 2 years, there's no reason to, focus in on it and make it something bigger than it actually is. I would imagine with the pro that he is, he probably had something to say to the group after that match. Can you shed any light there?
Yeah, he absolutely did. In fact, before Pablo gave his speech, he wanted to pipe in early and before all that and say, he held his hand up and took accountability for that and really felt like he had let the group down a little bit because he felt that if he hadn't have done that, we would have gotten the result. And as he said, it wasn't like we played well to particularly deserve that result, but good teams find a way to win even when they're not playing well. And he felt like he kind of hampered us a little bit there. So he's an unbelievable pro and just an unbelievable man. To stand up and take that kind of accountability says a lot. And it's, I think it's a message to the rest as well.
I believe the broadcaster said Saba Lobjanidze, when he came into the match, shot out of a cannon. I will not profess to know much about him prior to the acquisition, but in a truncated space, he looks like a pretty exciting attacking option, yeah?
Yeah, I would say in all of the games that he's come on for us in the second half, he's had an extremely positive impact. This one probably the heaviest positive impact because he assisted on the actual goal. But just the energy with which he approaches the match, I think, is outstanding and contagious, and couldn't be more happy so far with the early returns we're seeing with him.
The season, as long as this, injuries are inevitable for every team. In some years, you get a little injury luck. In some years, you don't. So if you could update us, Jay Glad, I mean, when he's not out there, I think the sign of a great center back is that when he's playing, you feel calm, and when he's not out there, you notice it. So whether it's Jay Glad or anyone else right now, how healthy is this group leading into this absolute sprint on your calendar?
Yeah, we are on the mend. Unfortunately, this is the moment you would like to be absolutely, completely injury-free, because with this many games, you're going to need to rotate players and you're going to need to really rely on your depth. And so missing Justin at this exact moment is really difficult. Griffin Dillon suffered a broken foot in the game against St. Louis. That's why he subbed out in the first half. So again, that hurts our depth. But, I think Justin is on the mend. I think that we will see him back within, I don't know, let's call it 4 weeks. The other good news that we're having is that Emeka Anelli, probably the player that everybody's forgotten about, but what a quality player he is. We believe that he'll be back, hopefully early September. And so you add those two players into our group right now and you feel immediately a much stronger. So all in all, I think we're headed in a positive direction with our health, but obviously right now is not the opportune moment to have a few important players out.
Gozo pick up a knock in the All-Star game. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, he did. That was, I don't know if you remember watching the game, but there was a moment where he broke in behind the back four and went to cut the ball back to put it onto his right foot to make a pass. And at that moment, he strained like the easiest way to call it is like a hip flexor, although we all know that's not the scientific name, but he strained a little bit, small tweak. We're expecting him back shortly.
Let me review some of the moves and signings you made in the offseason. And, the early returns seem to be pretty positive, and maybe some have flattened out a little bit. Let's start with Morgan Gilavogi, who you had referenced with the red card. 6 assists on the year, which you like, but only 1 goal. And obviously, when it comes to attacking pieces, you right or wrong, and you know this as a striker, you're going to be judged on your stats. Are you pleased with what you've received in exchange for the investment for Morgan Gilavogi?
Yeah, absolutely. He does so much more than what shows up on the stat line. He's a player that all of the players around him, I think, feel more confidence when he's on the field. I think he makes the players all around him better. I think the return on 6 assists is positive for sure. The 1 goal, probably not quite what we want, but we knew that this wasn't going to be a 10 to 15 goal scoring type player. We added him for his ability, as I said, to combine with others, make them better, and create goal chances, which I think he's doing both of those things very, very well. So very pleased with him.
First time we saw Stein, he scored a unbelievable goal, and I know that's not necessarily his MO, nor is it what you asked for from that position. So I won't necessarily hone in on his stats per se, but I'll ask you about the season you feel like Stein Spearings has had.
Yeah, also I think another very good acquisition, a player that brings calm to us. I mean, you could see a little bit of the difference between when he was off the field against St. Louis and to when he was on it. We are just a better possession-based team when he's on the field. He's the type of guy that just kind of knows where he needs to be and knows where the next pass needs to go. He also has done a really nice job of breaking up plays defensively. So I think another real positive signing.
Let's move over to Sanabria, who may be my favorite player you brought in. I don't know if it's the World Cup stuff, but I just feel I didn't realize he was going to be as dangerous with his service and his ability to find other players to put them in positions to score. So I would imagine you only have good things to say about Juanman, yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but another really good acquisition by our group to find that player, because I do think it was critical to how we wanted to play this year, to have attacking wing backs that can add something, can add goals, add goal chances, add good crosses, and he's done all of that. And what else he's really good at is defending. An excellent 1v1 defender, and so that's been a major benefit for us this season.
4 goals, 3 assists for Diego. 12 games played, 9 starts, and of course, the health has been a bit of an issue, and then getting him back fit and in form. And then we all just kind of wonder if there's this World Cup hangover. Are you satisfied with what you're getting from Diego right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, as I've always said, there's 2 things that a player can control. That's his attitude, which goes in his attitude and his effort. And I think both of those have been outstanding for us since he's been dealt the devastating news of not making that World Cup team. I was very concerned about how we would handle that, but from a what you can control perspective, his attitude's been great. His effort has been great in the games. I don't think we've quite seen him come into his own and be at the level that we expect, but that takes a run of games, and he's had a stop-start season, as we all know. So I have no doubts that will be coming back soon.
All right, tell us about Tigres, and then we'll get into some big picture stuff. But that's the match tomorrow, 8 o'clock Mountain Time. It's on Apple TV, also on FS1. It's your first Leagues Cup match. What are you guys up against tomorrow night?
I mean, Tigres over the past let's call it 5 years, has been an extremely high spending, highly competitive team that wins things. And so, we expect to see a very talented group with some outstanding players, and it will be a massive challenge for us tomorrow night. There's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the top teams in Mexico, clearly.
I'm sure much of this will be left to Pablo and his staff, but of course you're running the show over there. So when you look at the schedule, you've got 3 Leagues Cup matches and then 2 MLS matches with Minnesota and Dallas. That's 5 home matches over the next 15 days. And it's good that you're at home, but that is a lot of soccer. I honestly don't think I've ever seen that on our schedule, dating all the way back to 2004, the first year the team was here. Maybe there's been a stretch like this. I don't think there has. How are you guys approaching this? What sort of shuffling can be expected with these lineups over the next 15 days?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is certainly that we're going to need to play a lot of players through these games. And there's always this notion that you want to sort of pick which games you're going to put out your absolute best lineup and which you aren't. What I would say is that there's not going to be a game where we're going to put out sort of a B squad. In all of these games, we're going to try to rotate very intelligently such that we feel like we have enough of our absolute best players, enough leadership out there, enough guys that completely understand, what the task at hand is, and then sprinkle around them guys that perhaps haven't gotten as many minutes or opportunities over the first half of the season. So it's going to be a very, very interesting stretch of a few weeks here in front of us.
Secondary transfer window in Major League Soccer. For our listeners, essentially that just means a window that is open to add pieces to the team. Opened July the 13th. It runs through September 2nd and extended into September for the first time in 2 decades to align with the global leagues. And, of course, there's the World Cup break as well. Steve Starks joined the show a couple of weeks ago. He was very much speaking in an additive way as opposed to a subtractive way. You've already made one acquisition. We talked about Saba. As you kind of look at the group right now, where are the areas you may add to prior to the roster freeze date?
Well, I think we're looking at a couple of different scenarios. It's difficult to kind of go through it all with everybody here to explain in detail, but, scenarios meaning positions that we'll be looking to strengthen. With Justin's injury, we've been thinking a bit about the center back position. With our newest injury this weekend, coupled with the fact that Emeka has, we're not 100% convinced that he'll come back and how he'll come back. We've been looking at the center midfield position. We've been looking at attacking positions because we feel like we could add some depth there. And we do feel like this is a year where we could have an opportunity to win something. So we're approaching this from very much a positive perspective.
You have a designated player slot in your back pocket should you elect to use it. Any information in that direction?
No, what I would say is that we're not necessarily going out for a particular designated spot, right? I don't think that we're going out there and saying DP is where we want to go. I think we're looking for, what is the best position to help to strengthen us the most, and how do we find the best player in that position? And then let the finances fall where they may. If that's a DP, then it's a DP, and we certainly have the support from ownership to do that. But if we don't find the right player for that position, we're not just going to add one to add one. We really have to feel convinced that any player that we add right now in this summer window is going to help us both in the short term and in the long term, because this is not just a short term perspective for this ownership and leadership group.
It may not be as enticing or entertaining for fans per se who are interested in players more often than not. But when I saw you in the rundown today, I was reminded of an interview that we did maybe, 3 to 4 months ago, where you talked about after you received your promotion to be president of the club, both the men and the women, your desire to fill out the staff, the scouting staff, the strength and conditioning staff, the nutrition staff. I don't know if you remember what I'm alluding to, but I just wondered what progress was made in that direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good shout out, Spence, because ownership has given us an unbelievable amount of support in this area. They are strictly aligned with us, and they feel that the medical and performance side of things, as well as the cultural side of things, can be game changers for this club. And so they have given us the support. We've added upwards of 15 new employees and new positions in the last 12 months. And all of those positions are in support of our players. So we've added medical staff, we've added performance staff on the RSL side, we've added a senior director over both clubs to align us. We've added data analytics over both clubs to get that right for us. On the RSL side, we've added a scout and a head of recruitment. We've added player care positions on the RSL side and the Royal side. And so the support, the financial support, is been significant. And I do feel like that is one of the major reasons why both teams are having very good seasons in 2026.
Let's lean into some Royals stuff because they deserve it. A team record 5 goals on Sunday after conceding first. Tough 1-0 loss to Washington, but still right now a top 3 side, number 3 in the NWSL, 10-3-5, 31 goals scored, which I think is most in the league. A plus 12 goal differential. What do you like most about what the Royals have done this year?
So much. I mean, imagine to come from where they were a season ago at this time of the year to where that group is now. That's monumental, absolutely monumental. I'm so pleased with all the work that has been done and continues to be done on the Royals side with the sporting director, the general manager, Kelly Cousins, Connor Onicki have done an amazing job, I think, to add some really high-quality pieces, as well as to be really intentional about the culture there and the processes. Has been fantastic. Jimmy Kunratz and his coaching staff. We added John Griffiths, more of a senior assistant coach, and the whole coaching staff, I think, is working so much better this year than they were at the middle of last year. For sure. And then the players have really bought into, I think, the culture and the idea that a really strong team can compete and can beat anybody. This is not a team full of stars. This is a really high collective effort. So extremely pleased with the Royals. And when I look at the standings and say they're in 3rd place and what I've seen in all the games, I would say that's exactly where they belong. The top 2 teams are really, really good. Both of those 2 teams were in the NWSL Cup final last year and are really, really high level. And then I think it's us up next. So I'm very hopeful that we continue on with the performances we've had over the first half of the season and then finish really well in 2026.
Not a team full of stars, but maybe the team is the star.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. I appreciate your translation on that, Spence. I was having a hard time kicking those words out.
Okay. Just wanted to kind of bottom line it to make sure that we're on the same page. Hey, before I set you loose, let's do a little I know it's yesterday's news, but last time you joined us, we talked about the World Cup and the tremendous interest and the record-breaking engagement, both ratings and social media, online, etc. Oftentimes you hear about the bump that the game could receive domestically because of World Cup people consume. And then the World Cup ends, and you wonder if that carryover effect is actually real. Does it still feel real to you?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think we just feel it in and around our club. Obviously, we haven't had a real home game, but I would say the Burnley game was incredibly well attended, and what a great atmosphere it was for the game that night. So even just in the atmosphere at the games, the Royals games for sure, the crowds have increased. The energy in that stadium has increased in a really positive way. So, yeah, I think we're seeing some local dividends already from those games. And, nationally, I can't say that I can speak to a whole lot of it. And also, I'm not the smartest business guy in the bunch, so not much to add there. But from a soccer perspective and from a atmosphere at the games perspective, I think it's been already very positive.
Last thing, I'll set you loose on this because it was announced over the past 24 to 48 hours that Mauricio Pochettino has signed a new contract to continue as the manager of the U.S. men's team. It will go through the next cycle, the 2030 World Cup. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, can I jump on the fence for a minute here?
Sure.
I don't typically like to be on the fence, but I would say I have sort of 2 perspectives. The first perspective is from a coaching perspective. Any head coach is going to need time with a group to really mold it in the way that he sees fit, and to mold it in the best way. And consistency, I think, really matters in this sport and in coaching and leadership. So from that perspective, it is nice to see somebody get more than 2 years to do a really good job. But from the perspective of what I saw and what I observed in the World Cup, I wasn't real pleased, if I'm being frank, about how the team played and the tactics that were implemented. You know, the energy and the passion and all that stuff was fantastic, and really, you know, happy that we had what I would consider a fairly positive performance in the World Cup. But from what I saw tactically, both, you know, with lineup decisions as well as in-game decisions, I didn't think it was the highest level.
Interesting. There is some breaking news. MLS has named Larry Berg the next commissioner. Do you have any thoughts on this? I don't really know who Larry is, but of course Don has been around forever.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's a great time for change. I think Don Garber has done an absolutely fantastic job. Obviously, I'm incredibly thankful that he has helped to not only sustain, but I would say build a league in which I've been able to gain an occupation or keep an occupation for a lot of years now. So incredibly thankful for all the tremendous work that he has done. But I do think it's time to take a step forward with how we view our league and how some of the rules around it and a lot of those things. So happy to see change. I don't know a tremendous amount about the two candidates. It sounded to me like one candidate was very much versed in the broadcast world, which I think that would have been some obvious benefits for us as we near time to negotiate a new TV deal. And the other one was seen as really good collaborator and worker with the ownership, the owners, which I'm sure cannot be an easy thing to do. So what I think will be interesting is the team that is built under this new commissioner and sort of how he implements and adds people under him that can perhaps cover some of his weaker spots. So really excited about the change and hope that it is going to be as positive as the last, how many years has it been now? 30 years.
Yeah, quite a run for Don. He'll move over to a chairman role, so good for him. Jay, thanks for the time, man. Have a great week and good luck tomorrow night.
You betcha. Again, thanks for having me.
All right, Jason Christ, president of soccer for both the Utah Royals and Real Salt Lake. The Royals smoked Portland on Sunday in Sandy 5-1. And that's a team record for goals, breaking the record that they set 2 games prior on the road where they beat, I believe, North Carolina 4-1. The Royals are back in action Saturday against Denver at 2 o'clock. And RSL will start their Leagues Cup journey coming up tomorrow at 8 o'clock against Tigres in Sandy. For more information, go to rsl.com. All right, I want to let you know that you can help Utah kids start school with confidence. Over 200 kids at the road home need your help with back-to-school clothes, shoes, backpacks, and more. ESPN 700 invites you to be a child's advocate. Visit ESPN700sports.com or appletreeforkids.com for more information and to donate right now. We'll catch a break. Coming up on the other side, Morgan Scally. Okay, so, of course, it's day one of fall camp for the Utes. We'll bring you some sound up on the hill. Amy Donaldson will join us live in studio later on. Busy Monday show. Good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Are you playing this song because Cameron Rising might have another year of eligibility
If
left?
he wants it.
Hey, there's a ruling.
Why not?
That's in place. Nakari Rogers is the one name that I think, and you tell me if you have any other insight. So if you missed it, over the weekend, a judge in Colorado granted a 5th year for players that are from the high school class of 2022. You had to finish last spring. Nakari Rogers seems to be the name, Porter, that is out there. Any insight?
Yeah, that's kind of the one that number one, he's still ready to play and in form. So that's a natural fit. And from what I understand, wants to keep playing football. Now, does he want to come play behind Wayshawn Parker or be part of that situation? From what I gather, Utah would probably be open to kicking the tires on Nakari, and they do have 1 or 2 roster spots open as of today, so it's possible. But there's also a couple hundred or so players from around the country that are now eligible again, and as Morgan Scalley told us up on the Hill earlier today, they will look at all of those options. So keep your eye on that too.
But to be clear, Cameron Rising is not one of them.
I don't think so.
Okay. That would bring me great joy if we got a release like Cameron Rising's back. He's going to compete with Devin Dampier for the starting quarterback job. Then we get health updates every week. I will say this: the like little, it wasn't a commercial, but the little video that Utah football did with Cameron in the truck with that song was elite. That was excellent work by them up there.
Excellent job.
That was very cool.
It was a Ford, but whatever.
I just said truck.
I know.
Oh, wait. You're a truck snob.
It's okay.
What's your preferred truck, you truck snob?
I'm a Chevrolet guy.
Who isn't?
Right. But,
Wasn't it like a vintage Ford, though?
It's Witt's.
Oh, really?
It's Kyle's truck.
Oh, I did not know that.
So we may have to put that video to bed, I guess.
There was a very handsome radio voice involved in that spot, if I recall correctly.
There was.
That was me, by the way.
Top-rated show in the
I don't like to brag, but, we are your home of football in the market. Speaking of which, Camp Scally is underway for Utah football. For the best coverage of the Utes fall camp, keep it tuned into OC. And this program, The Drive Every Day, and visit ESPN700sports.com. Camp Scally is brought to you by SendXL JBR, Beer Bar, Citron Cooperman, and your Utah Toyota dealers on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. So in case you missed it, from earlier today, day 1 of Utah fall camp, here's the new head coach of the Utes, Morgan Scally.
Greetings.
Greetings, Coach.
Do you want me to hold your mic? Grüß euch miteinander.
We're so tan.
Sure.
Huh?
Gotta translate that.
Okay,
I don't know the position I'm in right now. Spray tan.
all right, everybody ready to rock?
Yeah. Do it.
All right, Coach Scally, how you feeling? How are things looking? Day 1, take me through.
Excited to be back. Ton of progress in spring. I love what I'm seeing in terms of the energy, the body compositions from the summer lifting and conditioning. Good first day, 12 periods, really not grueling, just trying to knock off the cobwebs a little bit, but excited to have these guys back.
Morgan, in this transfer portal NIL era, it's rare to have 2 starting level quarterbacks sharing the room, but you have that with Devin and Bird. What about them makes them coexist in this offense and on this team?
Well, I think the reason for it is they're unselfish. And both of them embrace their role. Both of them are very competitive and understand that their number can be called at any time. It also allows for us to be a little bit creative and do some things with their skill sets that can cause issues with defenses. But they're unselfish young men who are all about the team. And that's a rare combination at that position. So very blessed to have those two.
With the new 2022 ruling from the kids that can come play, are you going to explore anything like that, or is your team set?
We will explore anything that we feel gives us an advantage and can help us win football games.
How many roster spots do you have to explore, depending on how many players are available?
For us to know and you to find out. No. There is maybe some wiggle room for 1 or 2 guys, is my guess.
How do we find that out?
Well, you can talk to each other. You're smart guys.
What positions do you think are the most competitive right now?
Oof. Safety is definitely one of the most competitive positions. Linebacker, wide receiver is probably where we have the most depth.
You talked a lot about offensive line back in the spring and how May was going to be massive for their development this fall. How did the offseason go for those guys up front?
Really good, but we don't have pads on. So, when we start to hit each other and tackle and all that stuff, that's when I'll really have a good understanding. Already from day one, I can tell they've worked their butts off during the offseason. It's a lot crisper, cleaner, faster to the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of things that you can tell, okay, they've spent a ton of time together.
Devin talked a lot about this offseason just getting better as a passer, pre-snap adjustments. Now that he's had an offseason in spring, what have you seen from him just early on in terms of?
Yeah, so far so good. Like I said, the speed at which they started to execute on day one, much better than what we saw even near maybe the mid to end of spring. So the player-led practices were a huge bonus. And I think, if the new bill passes, you're going to see that, you can have mandatory practices during that summertime. So that just gives us another opportunity to continue to improve what we did in spring.
Morgan, how do you feel about the state of the defensive line group?
Much like the offensive line, we got to hold off judgment until we get some pads on. But that's one group you can tell has a chip on their shoulder. If you're walking through the facility and there's guys in the position room watching film, it's the D-line. They are very aware of the guys that we lost and the pressure on them. They're up to the challenge. I'm excited for that group.
Off the bat, day one, any natural-born leaders that are standing out to you? That we don't know.
Oh, man. No, we won't vote for leadership and captains until before the first game. But, some of the guys that were already on leadership council, showed up today. And then, again, just because you're on a leadership council doesn't mean you're a leader. You can not be on a leadership council and still be a leader. Leadership is influence based on trust you've earned, and so we've had a lot of guys that have been here a number of years, earned that trust to influence others to come along. So I'm pleased with the whole group, but we'll have to wait to see.
You've had spring ball,
yes,
but today, first official day, how different was it for you?
It's just I'm not coaching a position group, so I'm not so much worried about, because I believe that in Coach McGiven and Coach Swan that the schemes are going to be what they need to be. My whole focus is on how we're doing, and are we running to the ball? Are we living our culture? It's the behavior that I'm after, and probably not good enough today in terms of hustle. Being relentless to the ball, relentless jogging off the field. This game requires a lot and a lot of discipline, and if we're not holding them accountable, then the culture presents itself in a way that you're not happy with. So, not good enough today in that aspect. But the only difference for me is I'm much more looking at every position group and where can we fill holes and where can we improve, as opposed to coaching a side of the ball or a position group.
Now that you've had the spring and summer with Coach McGiven, what sticks out most about his offense?
He is going to identify our playmakers and get them the ball. He understands that we have to establish the line of scrimmage, we have to establish a physical brand of football, but he's also really good at, here are my playmakers, here's how we're going to get them the ball. Not here's my scheme, you have to fit inside of it. It's who do we have and how can I really accentuate them? How can I highlight them and their skill set?
How similar will the offense look to fans? I mean, forget all the terminology and all that.
I guess it probably very similar. Yeah. Probably similar. You have, formation of the boundary stuff. You have shifts, motions, the quarterback run game. And that's a big reason why Devin and Bird, wanted to stay is because it was very similar. And there'll be some added wrinkles, obviously, but yeah, I would say to the average fan, you're sitting there going, okay, this looks similar to what we saw last year.
Defensively, how much wiggle room does Colton Swan have to explore schematic changes and that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah, it's his defense. I wanted that as a defensive coordinator. Kyle gave that to me. Now we are who we are, and we have a mutual understanding of what we want to do here, but there's certain things that they're going to do, and they'll ask my opinion on it, but I want him to have all the freedom to be him, to not feel like someone's looking over his shoulder or second guessing what he's doing. I'm there to support him.
Did he say greetings to welcome
Yes.
the media with enthusiasm?
Very much so. Very enthusiastic greetings.
A little bit of a sharp, or I should say a sharp contrast to the brisk welcome of the former head coach.
I don't know that I have heard greetings, but
I think Kyle's was okay, right? Wasn't that Kyle?
Usually.
Meaning like get to it because I have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Let's get this over with.
So the policy remains in place that we are not allowed to watch practice, but the general overall vibe and sentiment, because we're big vibe guys, #team fun.
Of course.
Does appear to be a little bit more, how shall we say, jovial? And I do want to be clear about one thing. You won't get the anti-Kyle sentiment on this radio show. You just never will. If you're looking for that, this is not the home for you.
Yeah. And we talked about this quite a bit on the show last week because we were looking ahead to fall camp. And I found it a little bit funny that while from a personal perspective, Kyle and Morgan are very different people. I gave a little insight into, being up there during coaches' shows and stuff like that, where you get to see those guys behind the scenes a little bit. And Kyle is just so dialed in, so business, so serious, right? Not mean, but serious. And then on the other note, I've seen Morgan up at that facility playing pranks on people, dancing at his desk, just very different from that perspective than Kyle. As people, couldn't be separate more so. But when we got the camp policies and procedures and practices and timing, Spence, I think they copied and pasted it from last year.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a funny dynamic where, yes, very different people, very different sometimes vibes that they put off, but stuff looks awfully familiar up there on the hill. And that's kind of a funny dynamic, push and pull.
So if I could summarize, it's we still don't trust you with information, but we're going to be nice to you when we give you that news.
Maybe a little bit. I think that was, and you were up there for our Chalk Talk with Morgan.
Indeed.
I think that was kind of it. He was like, hey, I'm giving you guys a peek behind the curtain because I know you want it, but, this is kind of all you get.
Well, here's what I appreciated about that. And to be clear, in case certain people are listening, and we know that you are, hello, Paul.
Shut up, Paul.
That was off the record, okay? So we know, Paul. Okay, we're not bringing anything
Correct.
on the record, Paul. Love you, Paul. But what I will say is what I appreciated about that is Morgan walked us through exactly why these things are in place, and it made total sense. Whereas the previous regime was just like, hey, this is how it is, just so you know, like
right.
No explanation for any of it, and that's fine. Like, if that's your approach, look, as I'd say almost every day, results. We're about results, okay? Super Bowl every day. There's a reason why we approach our craft in the afternoons on ESPN 700 the way we do, okay? We're about results here. There's no vibes. I mean, we're #team fun, but we're about winning. As Charlie Sheen once famously said, hashtag that, winning.
Winning.
Okay? And Kyle won a lot, all right? So whatever his approach is, fine, because it meant that Utah football won a lot of games, and that changed. Kyle Whittingham changed Utah football for good and forever.
Yep.
Okay? Period. At the end of that sentence. Let me be clear. So I'm not knocking on his approach. I do find the differences somewhat entertaining and kind of fun to discuss.
No, it'll be part of the story of this football season is, those differences. But yeah, you mentioned why it's important, right? Intel in college football in today's age is like it's part of the estate.
It's everything,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw at Big Ten Media Days. There was a fella dressed up in Connor Stallion's gear.
Oh, was that?
Decided to ask Kyle questions.
No way. That's
and
funny.
there's like, we're gonna call it there. We're gonna move on with Coach Witt. They didn't let him get into it.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that's not anything Kyle wants to discuss.
I wonder if it even clued to him, the guy in the sunglasses and Central Michigan gear, what that was all about.
He really stayed away during his address as the new Michigan coach during Big Ten media days. He really stayed away from any of that stuff. Yep. He's like, look, he basically said, a lot has happened. I wasn't here for it. So, you can ask the question if you want. I got nothing to say. So let's move off of it.
But yeah, it's part of the game in a big way. And Utah actually is kind of notorious around the country for using it in their advantage, not using technology to cheat and do it, but during the course of games, deciphering signals and knowing what's going on with the other teams and snap counts and stuff like that. Utah's actually, you go ask coaches and staffs around the country, they're like, yeah, playing them's a nightmare in those ways because halfway through the game, they start knowing our calls or they start jumping our quarterback's cadence. Or on the other side, there's a simulated snap count, right? There's a lot of stuff that Utah does kind of in that realm where you don't want to give an inch. It's a game of inches. Can't give an inch.
The defensive line substitutions are a work of art. It's hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I do wonder, and I'm sure Morgan will use all that stuff to his advantage, but Kyle took it to the point where people in the stands were like, "Oh my, how much of my Saturday are we going to spend watching a 345-pound guy?"
Yeah.
Let's say take his time getting off the field.
I'm looking forward to Morgan's first injury report to see if he just continues what Kyle trolling all of us.
Yeah, kind of hope so. Be honest with you.
Well, look, as I referenced earlier, we had Jason Kreis on the show. Narratives, whether it's media narratives, fan narratives permeating through a community that cares about a team, they're created off of one thing. We overthink this stuff. They're created off of results. They just are. So we can talk about Morgan's approach juxtaposed to Kyle's all we want. If Morgan goes and wins football games, then approach it. You do whatever you want as long as you're winning games.
Yep.
That changes everything.
It is a sports more than I don't want to say more than, but as much as any business is results oriented.
Check your phone.
Hello, Paul.
Love you, Paul. You're the man.
That's our guy.
I told you. Said if you're listening, and we know that you are, because they always do. Last thing on this. I forgot to tell you this. So about 2.5 weeks ago, I was at an event. And I'm not going to say the event because I don't want anyone to know who said this. A very powerful Utah athletic figure. And I sit down. We're kind of going back and forth. I said, "So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think of this fall? What do you think? How do you think the team's going to be? Morgan's first year." Turns to me and says, "As long as they're better than Michigan." Boom. There you go. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Our friend Amy Donaldson joins us coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, we got 2 hours in the books. We have 2 hours to go on this Monday afternoon. It's about 88 degrees outside, which feels like 62 based off the heat wave we have had. Day one of Utah football camp going on today. BYU and Utah State get going on Wednesday. RSL back in action tomorrow in Leagues Cup. The Utah Royals on Saturday against Denver. So there's a lot going on. Major League Baseball trade deadline has come and gone. But Amy Donaldson, our friend from KSL, is live in the studio, frantically trying to figure out IT things, which is hard for us. Amy, we're not as with it as some of the Porter's generation.
True that, and I turn it on and turn it off. That's my go-to.
Yeah,
it's not working, but it's now moving again. The little bar.
Oh, the bar moving is key.
If the bar will keep moving, I'll be super happy.
Well, our generation is if a Nintendo game is stuck, you take it out and you blow on it and you put the game back in. You hope that it works.
Yeah.
And it usually did.
Yeah, I just turn things on and off until they break.
Hopefully that's the solution. I do the same thing. How are you? What's new? Give me an update. Everything good?
Yeah, I'm so busy working on that project. I told you hopefully is going to be published. I'm thinking it's looking more like the end of August or September. I'm not sure. But that's on high school sports. And then I got involved in a capital murder case about a week ago. And so I've been burning the candle at both ends. And then my computer, as I told you, I updated Chrome and it said, oh, wait, we can't run this anymore. So I have to, I have like 3 computers open at my house trying to figure out which one I can use for which job. So,
have you volunteered to take on a capital murder case, or was this a new assignment for you?
It was. So I covered, as you know, I covered the prison, covered corrections, youth and adult corrections in the 90s. And so I was actually contemplating another project. I'm just trying to figure out what project I would do next, right? And just in conversations found out that there had been a decision not just to vacate the conviction of a man named Douglas Carter, who was convicted in 1985 of killing a woman named Eva Olesen.
Okay.
That conviction was vacated, but that there was just a finding that some testing of evidence at the scene didn't turn up his DNA. And so that seems significant. So anyway, just looking into that and trying to figure out where I go next and what I do,
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a weird thing to bounce between high school sports and but yeah.
Well, you've done a little bit.
It's always been weird like
but
that.
You've done a little bit of everything in your career, right?
I have.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I didn't do, I did one business feature.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I've pretty much written for every desk in the building. I have even written religion stories, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, you've done a little bit of everything. And I don't want to bring this up because I just you're good to help us kind of understand how women's sports is covered.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like Amy's in studio, so let's do women's sports. That's not the.
But I love it.
But
I
so
love it. Yeah.
have you been following the story of? And look, Clay Travis once upon a time was a left-leaning liberal attorney from Nashville, Tennessee. He used to come on my show every week because he covered college football.
Mm-hmm.
So he's clearly, shifted his tone to find a cash cow lane for himself. This is not who he used to be. I mean, I'm dead serious. We had him on my show every week. And now, of course, he's far right-leaning media sports person. I don't even know what he does anymore. But there's this back and forth where he's offering a prize of $10 million for a head-to-head basketball game between the defending NBA champions, the Las Vegas Aces, and a boys' high school state title team of his choice. And whoever wins that game gets $10 million. I wonder what you make of it.
I think he's a provocateur.
Yeah.
If you want to know what he is nowadays, that's what he is.
Yeah.
He's a guy who, it's like being a columnist on steroids. So his whole MO, in my opinion, of the last almost 10 years, I think, has been to poke and prod and provoke us into outrage, right? And so I think it's silly. I don't know if they'll do it. I don't know. I hope they don't. But, I think that I love it. Look, I remember when I was covering the Utah women's basketball team. And again, that's the thing I did on the site because we didn't really have a beat writer, right? But they had some guys who played, who were from state championship teams. They were guys who couldn't make the Utah basketball team, but they were really good, right? They were good players. And there were some, who were on the coaching staff or on the training staff, who played. And I'm telling you, you don't know how good the women are till you have to play them. But it's silly. I don't know. I mean, this stuff worked in the 80s. Like it drummed up. They don't need this kind of circus, type thing. And that's what it is. He's a carnival barker, and he's just saying, step right up and see the bearded lady or the giant alligator or whatever he wants to, whatever weird thing he wants. He wants it to be weird. And I think it's beneath them, and I hope they don't do it. It was I felt disappointed, actually. Someone I really love and respect is Lindsey Vonn. Lindsey Vonn was killing it. She was winning everything. And she said, I'd like to ski in the men's World Cup. And I understand why she did it. But I want us as women to know that what you do affects what other women can and can't do. Like there's a contagion that's there. So just like this whole dust up with Sophie Cunningham and it was with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Like there's always more to it than just I have an opinion and I want to share it, or I have this thing I want to do and I'm going to go do it. You're never just you. You represent something more.
What would be the benefit? $10 million is a lot of money, but I feel like it's just.
If he'd done it 10 years ago, I think he might have gotten a take. They might have said okay, because the women were not. I remember when I was covering the WNBA, the women made less than me, and I'm a journalist. Like I'm just saying, they were somewhere between the state poverty level and the federal poverty level. It was not good. So. Yeah. I think they might, and again, if you're trying to drum up interest, you know what? Go for it. I think that women's tackle football league, they might take you up on a high school football challenge, right? Like there are ways in which that would. The problem is the women's game is not the men's game.
That's my point, Amy. Yeah. That's the entire point. I don't love the culture war politics that have seeped into the world of sports, where now it's discussed in a way that. I think detracts from the bottom line, which is they're two completely different games played by two completely different type of athletes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't know why we have to exploit it.
But I remember locally here, I was covering the state tournament for the women's softball, high school softball championships. And one of the local people, who shall remain nameless, said, well, let's see if you can. He challenged his buddy and said, let's see if you can hit a fast pitch.
No chance. Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I understand having a good time, and like some of this, what we do is entertainment, and we want to have fun, right?
Sure, yeah.
We have that media game. I don't know if you played in it. The Jazz used to do. I teamed up with Jody one year, and we were abysmal. I made one basket, and I thought Ron Boone was going to lose his mind.
Yeah.
I finally made a basket.
Yeah.
But it was like people were taking it super seriously, and I thought it was hilarious. So you can have some fun and stuff, but I don't like he's purposely disrespecting these women. They are elite, world-class athletes. And to say that high school boys deserve to be on the court with them or competing against them is just insulting.
I just don't know what the point is. Like, what are you really trying to...
The point is to humiliate the women. It's to degrade the women. It's it's the beef I had with the coverage of women's basketball before Caitlin Clark. Before Caitlin Clark came into the VU and they started to respect the game and respect the athletes, there was a lot of people saying, well, it's boring. Look, I sat by someone at an RSL game a couple weeks ago, season ticket holder, and he was, I don't know what he was annoyed about, but he was in a very bad mood. And he said, are you season ticket holders? So we started chatting, right? And I said, well, I'm actually like with the media, so I just buy tickets when I have time, and I come mostly to Royals games. And he said, I bought season tickets the first year, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't deal with it. And I watched. There was one day a RSL game and a Royals game. Every bit as entertaining. Are they the same game? No.
Right.
Like, it's just, I don't know what you're after. Now, the dude was older than me, so I'm giving him that. But I just think, just let women be who they are. Why do they have to be, a a version of men, a littler version, or or a more disrespected version, or a cheaper version.
Yeah.
It's not the same. And I hate, like, I love Emma Hayes, her interview about women's soccer, where she said, there's so many things we do in women's sports that we just don't think, hey, is this the best thing for the women's game? Like in women's basketball, the ball is smaller, right? There's a lot of things you do differently because women are playing, and that doesn't mean it's a lesser game. It's there. We are different, and so to sit, and that he's probably the first person who's like, oh, let's define a woman. He's one of those guys, but he also isn't going to respect women and say, and these are the same people who are like, let's protect women by putting them down and keeping them in their place.
I think the point that you make that I just want to continue to underscore is I don't think there's any reason that it should be comparative. I just, let the real estate be the real estate, and let the people that want to go to the women's game go to the women's game. It doesn't need to be this continuous.
No. And you want to hold a circus game? Like, look, I love what my favorite current circus performance is the field goal contest that what's his name does, that has the podcast.
Is it McAfee?
Yeah. And he Pat. And he had like Jason Kelsey do it in Timberlines. But they always have a student or a couple students.
Right.
And then once in a while they bring in a celeb, or they bring in a former player, or they bring in a center and say, kick. That to me that's harmless, fun, interesting. And sometimes you learn something about athleticism and how it transfers or doesn't transfer.
Yeah.
But I think that's where everyone gets something out of it. And this is just meant to hurt the women. It's just meant to make fun of them. It's just meant to belittle them.
Yeah. And just whether you like it or not, let other people like it. Like that's the thing that's like weird to me.
That's what I said. I mean, when the guy said, "Oh, it wasn't for me," I said, "Well, that's fine. I love it.
Yeah.
I love this team.
They're playing well, yeah.
That is playing right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If you can watch 5-1, if you can watch that yesterday and be bored, I mean, I'm glad you're not my friend. I'm glad we don't go to games together, because I don't know what it takes to entertain you.
Yeah, it's like 13 goals in the past 4 games or something.
Chloe Lacasse has 3 franchise records right now. Like it's like just enjoy. What are you looking for?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I just think people need. And if I don't like something and I don't enjoy it, I don't think everyone should not enjoy it.
Yeah.
I just say, oh, it's not for me.
Yeah, I don't love NASCAR, but a lot of people love NASCAR. Like, I don't find it much different.
No, I mean, I think there are even aspects of that I like. I think the hard thing for me is, one thing I don't like is horse racing. But I love the stories of some of these jockeys and some of these trainers and what they do. But again, I'm not here to say you can't do stuff that I don't enjoy.
Right.
Like, everything is not for me, and I'm fine with that. And I think that's the thing that I love about all the options is if you're bored right now, if you can't find something you love, that's on you. There's so many options.
Yeah.
The thing I worry about is as things get more popular, like just look at what is happening with the World Cup, that it turns into this extraction model. How do we get people to pay us for a thing that really was built on the backs of the fans? None of this exists without fans.
Yeah.
And I just think that's where we lose our way. But more so than, are we everything to everybody? The WNBA never tried to be for everybody. And that actually ticked people off. I think there are people who still resent the fact that the women said, this is what we do, this is our lane, and this is where we're going to embrace it. And they didn't try to make themselves into a thing that everyone would love.
The other thing I wanted, and I just looked up the number, because after the World Cup ended and the men made it to the knockout round and they won a game. This goes back to the equal pay settlement that was back in 2022, a $24 million settlement with U.S. Soccer Federation. And then the story came out that as a result of the Men's World Cup, the women were also receiving a piece of the pie. I don't know how much you followed this.
Not since I read that article, but I hadn't known what the how they divided the pie. I knew there was an equalization effort. What that was, I wasn't.
So it's a $12.8 million check, essentially. $12.8 million in revenue with the U.S. men's national team. and that is being spread out to the women because of the equal pay settlement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and people will say, well, that was them. So the problem is that the men have had the benefit of a lot more time, decades longer, with that kind of financial investment, public financial investment. This is the other thing I always have to remind people. There are financial investments in men that we've never made in women, not in any way, shape, or form. So that's what they're sharing. And the women on the field are having, I mean, look, I think it was, what did I watch the other day where it said, the WNBA All-Star Game had more viewers than the men's All-Star Game. Now, I think there's some really important reasons for that, but I think that it also shows that that's where the growth is. And if we had invested in women the same way we had invested in men all this time, you wouldn't need one to help the other. You wouldn't need that. But the women have been far more successful on the field.
Yeah.
So if you're judging it, I mean, this is the thing. People change, as a sports metaphor, they move the goalposts depending on what argument they're making.
Right.
But the bottom line is, if you want to build sport in this country, then you have to build it with an eye for equity. You just have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the soccer parallel to basketball isn't necessarily all that accurate. I mean, the NBA for years subsidized the WNBA while the women's game was growing, and on the other side, our women were winning World Cups where our men 2 cycles ago didn't even qualify for one.
No, but you have to remember. I mean, like I interviewed a couple of the Royals players who came here the first time around. So what was that, 2017?
Yep.
And they were talking about dressing in high school gymnasiums or locker rooms, sometimes in their car, not having access to trainers, not having you're playing on a field that is really a danger to you. Like there's potholes and there's rocks and whatever. And I feel like that if people understood, remember we talked about when RSL first started here and they were playing at Rice Eccles and then they were driving around to parks. Like it was this sort of, fun bus thing. Hop on, let's go to a park and we play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the field time they could get. So that seems so far from like where we are right now, right?
Yeah.
Especially after the World Cup.
Yeah.
You're like, no man's team is doing that, right? We're investing, they have a place to play. But there was a time when it more resembled that. That's what women have been dealing with across the board regardless. And a lot of times they're just excluded. We've talked about Olympic sports. Most of the time, women they don't get access because it's the right thing. They get access because they sued.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And nobody, look, for whatever you want to say about the women, they just want to play sports. They don't want to be activists. They're not trying to just make a statement. They want to play the same games you want to play.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. And one more thing, we'll catch a break, because you had referenced the Sophie Cunningham stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, women's basketball players being front-facing about opinions like this isn't new.
Nope.
But a reaction like this feels new.
Yeah.
As far as how many people – and look, it's a hot-button topic. I'm quite sure she knew what she was doing. The league came out and apologized, and a lot of people are mad at the league for that. Dan Wetzel wrote a piece on it. But – the reaction to the opinion of a WNBA player, how loud and widespread it actually was, I found that notable. I thought it was interesting.
I think that we've talked about before, like because of the origins of the league, and you're talking about a league that is, it's built on the backs of LGBTQ women in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Those women were the trailblazers, and that became that league and sports in general has been their refuge. It's been a place where they have found community and found acceptance. And so they are very protective of that culture. So the attack on trans women comes at a time when I think all women are feeling under fire. I mean, I heard this discussion the other day, and this woman put it really well. Like, if you attack trans women and you say they can't play, that you have to prove that you're a woman in some way. And so somebody has to judge who is a woman and who is not a woman, right? Like, and this is just not a territory I am comfortable with. I have been criticized for being too masculine. I have been criticized for not being feminine enough. And I feel like when we don't hear any of these debates about trans men, And that tells you everything you need to know about the situation. It's not about trans. It's about being trans. It's about being a woman. And it's about somebody wanting to define what a woman is and what a woman isn't. And that's what most women reject. And the minute you start letting government agencies decide who isn't female enough, you're gonna have it's gonna go wrong in a lot of ways. And so the other thing is, this is being pushed. This is an agenda being pushed by people who have no intention of standing up for women's sports. They don't cover women's sports. They don't invest in women's sports. They don't believe in expanding women's sports opportunities. If you read, this comes from the same Project 2025 playbook. If you read Project 2025, they want to get rid of Title IX. Title IX we think of as a sports bill, but what Title IX did was it gave women the chance to go to college. That was the equal opportunity that they got. And that has done nothing but help humanity. To have an educated populace is the best thing in the world. If that comes through an athletic scholarship, think of the men's lives it's changed. It's changed women's lives in the same way. And so I feel like when people get on their soapbox about, like, we're just standing up for women's sports, whatever, I'm like, where were you when we were talking about funding? Where were you when the women were not allowed to compete in the Olympics? Where were you when they couldn't use March Madness at the NCAA tournament? Where were you on your soapbox just like this throughout all these issues? Because I've been in women's sports for 25 years, and I can tell you that I have seen a lot of ignorance, but never more so than the people right now who are saying, I have to protect women.
Yeah.
Now, are there some people who have been here all along who are singing that? Those are the people, like, have that opinion, feel that way. I'm fine with that. But mostly men who come in and say, we got to protect women, and then they turn around and they have all these sexist views that hurt women in every other way. Those are the people I'm like, you're not trying to protect women. Yeah. You're trying to control women.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's well said. And when I saw the comments, I knew that, like, these politicians aren't going to sit out the chance to villainize the WNBA, especially in an election year. Yeah. You know, I knew it was just going to be jumped on the way that it was. But again, I saw the way that the feedback felt large and sizable.
Yes.
For a league that has had women in the past express certain opinions that have just not even been news. I actually kind of viewed that as interesting, pretty seminal moment.
And I also think you saw two things happening. You saw Caitlin Clark have a response to those questions that the same people who support Sophie Cunningham did not like.
Right.
Because they want her to be a certain thing. And this is Caitlin Clark's, what she's complained about. I'm not your symbol.
Yeah.
I'm a basketball player. And for all the people who say, I don't want politics in sports, you're probably the problem. Let them play.
The people that say that want their politics in sports.
Yes. And I just think, let people be who they are. And if you don't like them, you don't have to cheer for them.
Right.
Like, again, it's the same thing. You don't like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
We're not saying you have to cheer for it. Yeah. I know people who have certain players they don't like or whatever, for whatever reason. I have some of those in movies. There's certain movies I'm like, I'm not seeing that guy. I mean, I just saw an ad for, or I think it's Richard Gere. He's 70 and his girlfriend in the movie is 28. I'm like, I will be skipping that. So
just tapping out on it.
I mean, like, what?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, and Caitlin Clark, like another superstar basketball player, should not be forced to give an opinion one way or the other. Michael Jordan used to famously say, Republicans buy sneakers too. He never wanted to go there.
Yeah.
Like, he was pressured to. He never wanted to make a statement.
I feel like you can if you want to, and you shouldn't have to if you don't want to.
Exactly.
And why you saw this in the World Cup, and I think it was Trevor Noah that pointed this out. If you look at European soccer players, they never get asked what their governments are doing. Why is your government doing this? Why is your government doing that? You look at African soccer players or South American soccer players, and they're asked to defend their government's actions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How would you like to be a player and you have to defend our politicians? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's like the worst possible scenario to be in.
It's lose-lose. There's nothing that will go well there. All right, coming up next, day one of Utah football camp. Morgan Scalley was recently a guest on one of Amy's pods, and we were kind of discussing just the differences in personalities based off. Morgan welcomed in the media today, and look, the policies remain the same, but the personalities are very much different. So we're going to talk about that. I want to let you know that it's time to start thinking about football, and we're only a few weeks away from the best time of the year. Now's the time to prep your field. Make sure you're using IFA Step 3 for the weeks ahead when the weather is still hot, but as the dog days of summer give way to fall, it's time to start thinking about step 4, our fall and winter lawn fertilizer. Either way, you can find out more by visiting ifa.coop online. More with Amy coming up next on ESPN 700. Amy Donaldson is with us live in studio. We'll do one more segment with Amy today before we get to the 5 o'clock hour of the show. If you missed Morgan Scalley's comments from earlier, we're going to bring those back in the 5 o'clock hour as it is day 1 of Utah football training camp. And Amy, as someone who knows both Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley, I was hopeful we'd be able to watch practice. Nope. The policies essentially remain the same. It's the personality that very much feels different. As Kyle's whole thing when he'd welcome in the media is like, okay. And he clapped, he'd be like, okay, let's go. Got about 5 to 8 minutes. Let's go. Where Morgan greets everybody today with a big greetings. And, you know, he's the typical Morgan Scalley jovial self. So policies remain the same, but the personality certainly feels a lot different.
Yeah, I think I think when Chris Camerani and I were on during or after COVID, like once they take something from us, it's really hard to claw it back. And we saw our access to practices and training it just got less and less. And I think that's unfortunate in some ways. The problem covering any beat, right, is you have to be able to see and feel what's happening with the team so that you can ask good questions. And so hey, this guy's not practicing, or these two guys seem to be really, gelling. And those are questions you won't have because you're not witnessing it. Now the coaches can tell you things. And that's where Morgan's personality is going to be helpful, because he's going to think in terms of, off the field stuff and emotional intelligence and things like that most coaches are not. They're just like, ask me some questions about, how everyone's doing, and it's the same. Like literally, I would joke with Dirk that like I could write the stories without doing the interviews because it was like, well, the defense is ahead of the offense. And, I was like, that's the reason I hated covering college sports. Cover high school sports, you were going to go and you were going to have a conversation. You're going to learn something.
Yeah.
I had high school coaches who would let me watch film with them, and they would talk to me about what they hoped their team would or wouldn't be able to do, right? And how they develop players. And so you got real insight and real understanding into not just how they did things, but into what the program was offering those kids beyond X's and O's.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is really the guts of sports. That's what we love. And so it's unfortunate because you can't go and watch and just have insights on your own and then ask about them.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have a person who has a good handle on what might be interesting to a fan, and who doesn't care about fans, like I definitely think there are coaches who are like, the fans are my enemy. They're not, or maybe my frenemy, because I want them to buy tickets.
Right.
But I don't want them to be in my business at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that coaches who can see fans as an extension of the team, if they really see them as a 12th man, if they really see them as like, oh, this is a property of the community. I mean, sort of like we talked, I referenced the World Cup, but like instead of being an owner, you're a steward. And I think Morgan is much more of the opinion that I'm a steward. Mm-hmm. This is not my program. I'm just a steward of this program that I love.
Yeah.
And that makes for a different energy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've appreciated about Morgan's approach, and as we talked about a couple of segments ago, if you're looking for anti-Kyle Whittingham sentiment, you're not going to find it on this program. Okay, so this is not a knock.
One of my all-time favorite. In fact, all the Whittinghams. I like all of those coaches.
This is not a knock on Kyle. Mm-hmm. It's something that's different about Morgan, where Kyle would just be one to say, this is how it is, period, end of sentence. Where Morgan says, this is how it is, and let me tell you why. He had us up at the football building a few months back and actually walked us through how vital it is to have the information kept as private as possible for a couple of different reasons, because I'm never one just to say, oh, we don't have access, so they're jerks. To understand the layers here, I think you had referenced COVID, which certainly changed the way people viewed a lot of different things, and I think was a eye-opening moment for a lot of people to realize that maybe we don't need to give the access that we used to, and we're going to be fine without it. Once upon a time, if you wanted to propagate a message, you had to use the Fourth Estate. Now you have your own podcast as a team. You have your own media arm as a school, so you can use that to get it out there, right? Yeah. So that's obviously different. But there's also a new media approach that has ruined it for a lot of media members that do care about building trusting relationships, where they'll go to a practice or they'll go into a locker room and start live tweeting conversations that are supposed to be off the record. Like that happens all the time. Then suddenly, because of our ecosystem, a tweet from Utah practice is picked up on by TCU or something, and they're like, oh, Cameron Rising didn't practice today, huh? So there are reasons for the clandestine approach.
There are also speculators out there who are trying to make money.
Big piece of this.
Huge part of it, right? And a huge toxic part of it.
Yep.
But I will also say that there are a lot of people who coaches and team school officials and team managers, if you're talking about professional sports, who don't see the value in storytelling. They don't see the value in letting independents be a part of their program, right? And I think that that control is super appealing to a lot of coaches, because there's no variables. You're controlling the controllables.
Tell their own story.
Right?
Yeah.
So we will say who is. It's sort of like Nick Saban not letting freshmen talk, right? I can see a really good reason for that. I can also see why that's a problem, because we're going to get to know these kids over time, and that the story arc of those kids includes this year of them probably not playing at all, and what are they learning, and who are their mentors. And I think about all the things I've learned from kids when they came in and seeing them, and some of them it was an advantage. I had seen them in high school. So like Britton Covey, I knew since he was 14 or 15 years old, right? So I think, but a lot of people don't see the value in that, and they just want to control what they can control. And so they feel like if they can control the narrative, then everything will be better for the team. And I think the problem is that it makes it less accessible to fans. And I know some of my friends paid for season tickets this year, and it's unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable that that's where we're at. It is. These are, of all sports, football to me is like boxing. It's supposed to be the most accessible, and it is not. It is elite.
And it's not changing anytime soon.
No.
I mean, it's not like they're going to go backwards.
I think that not wanting people to understand the process, or not wanting to deal with natural questions that come up. We all only have the lens we have. We only have what we know in our mind. And so you can think you're like super open and you have a really good view of things, but I guarantee you somebody sees something you don't. Somebody noticed something you didn't. And that might be one really compelling thing that you as a coach might want to address.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't understand the idea that you don't. And the other thing is they control access. So if a coach doesn't like a reporter, this happened to our friend Andy Larson before, and there have been other reporters over time where a college coach, and on occasion a high school coach, and sometimes pro teams will say, everybody can come but that guy, And so I'll ask for something, and they'll say, well, okay, as long as it's just you or this person, but not that person. And a part of me thinks, well, you know what? We probably shouldn't do the story then. Because what they're doing is, if we do what they want, if we're good kids, they control access. These are publicly funded universities.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of issues that we need to ask hard questions about. And some of that is how you treat these young players, and especially now that they're basically on a payroll, right? And I feel like there's less accountability every year, less independent accountability every year, and everyone is okay with it because we have to control we have to control this thing that we've invested $1 zillion.
Yeah,
and I think it is wrong. I have always found it problematic that the college gives you the permission to be there. That should not be. There should be an independent entity. It is paid for with public tax money, and there should be an independent way. But look, the legislature did it. They said certain reporters couldn't have press passes. And one of them is suing them. But that's the problem with a lot of this is you have to have access. And if a coach won't talk, if they say, we don't like what you write, we don't like the questions you ask, we don't like the perspective you have, that's when the media needs to say, what is our job here? Because a lot of sports writers think their job is to be entertaining, and it is, right? This is our pastime. This is our escape. But it's also something that we are spending a lot of money on, and we ought to have some accountability in there.
Well, and you talk about this. Kamrani talks about it all the time. Transparency is always the best play.
100%.
Yeah, and I think it just answers questions in a way that you don't have to continue to spin webs behind the scenes to try to come up with a PR public front-facing approach that's just BS.
Mm-hmm.
But you're just kind of covering for things that are going on behind and I'm not talking about one school or one team.
No.
I'm generally speaking. And I approach this job in an interesting way where I know what it's like to be in a front office where we're like, we need to get a hold of this and we need to, kind of get public sentiment back on our side. And if we have to get creative with the language here or there, we're going to get creative with the language here or there. It's basically word salad. We're not going to be extremely transparent. We're going to do the best we can to get the message out that we want to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm listening to a press conference or when I'm doing an interview or when I hear somebody approach a certain sensitive topic a certain way, my antennas go up. I'm like, they're not telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And I think it does go back down to, do the fans want to know the truth? Is that something they're curious about? I think the public has a right to it when it comes to a publicly owned institution, but what's the excuse for the private institutions? They don't have to be transparent about anything.
I would say there's not really private institutions in sports anymore, Spence, because
Like
they all
BYU.
use public money.
Yeah.
They all use public money. They all use public funds. They're part of a league that is funded by government, by our tax money.
Mm-hmm.
So if BYU wants to play in these leagues, and there's not BYU without these leagues,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you want to participate in this publicly funded thing, then you have to be willing. I mean, look, there was another abuse scandal in one of the youth soccer academies. Okay, this is there is such a power imbalance in sports. Coaches have all the power, right?
Yeah.
And that starts in kindergarten and it goes until you're a pro. And that power imbalance doesn't really get better unless the player becomes a star. A star who can. Coaches have so much cachet.
Especially in college football.
And I would say college sports. Like, they become legend, right? And for good reason. Look, I think Majerus is a good example of somebody who probably needed to be reined in way more often than he got reined in. And he was coaching at a public university, being paid for with public money. And people are going to say, well, no, that's paid for by boosters or ticket sales. BS. I saw those latest, the audit that they did, where they talk about how much they were taking from the general fund or how much they were taking from student fees. It happened at Utah State as well. It's not true. None of these are built on private money completely. I would argue that even the Jazz and the Mammoth, like, they're using public funds.
They're using $1 billion
without tracks, and so there's all these ways in which we invest in these teams. And so to say that their coach or the owner gets to have this, like, basically authoritarian level power, in my opinion, it's never going to end well. Never.
We have historical precedent for it. I mean,
100%.
Jerry Sandusky, Penn State, protected for years and years and years.
You could look at Michigan State. You could look at a whole lot of there's a whole bunch being litigated just right now. We could list them all off. But, I feel like we have this idea that parts of sports are sacrosanct. They're not, right? They are games that we fund because we enjoy and we want it to be part of our culture.
Yeah.
That's fine. Mm-hmm. But there should be accountability that matches the amount of money we spend on it. And there are a lot of people who can never afford to go to a game.
Right.
Who will never get to go to a fan fest or whatever. And they deserve, their tax money is being used to, they deserve to have some role in it, some ownership. And if that's the only thing they get is watching it on TV or reading stories in the newspaper, that's still their link. That's still, I grew up reading a lot of stories, and I felt like they had an impact on me. I felt like reading about Larry Bird changed, like, how I wanted to be as a player, like how hard-nosed I wanted to be. What did I want to be the one who complained, or did I want to be the one who showed up early, right? Like, I think you can have an impact and never go to a game, I could never have afforded to go to an NBA game when I was a kid. But I think you learn something from the games if we tell the stories of it. And those stories belong to everybody.
Yeah.
They don't just belong to the people who have the money.
Yeah, I wonder, because as I'm listening to you talk, I'm thinking about the difference between, like, what I do as a radio host and what you would do as a columnist or writing a story. Mm-hmm. I have enough relationships around the marketplace where we can put together a radio show every day. We don't need the gatekeepers. We want the gatekeepers. We need, in a way, you got to cultivate those relationships, because I do want Morgan and Kalani or Will Hardy. Like, we want people on the radio show, but ultimately at the end of the day, if they're going to be unwilling to open the gate as gatekeepers, we'll figure it out. But when it comes to someone who's, like, on the beat, or when it comes to somebody who's, like, day-to-day job is to cover a team, I feel like the access they need is a little bit different than what I would need in this space. You've done both. How would you describe, like, the differences there?
The biggest difference is that I think a lot of times you can get away with superficial in TV and radio. Like you can go into your own opinion or what you saw or how you feel. Where if you're a beat reporter, you're reporting on just what the facts are. Like what do they tell you? What did you see? What was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there isn't this like sort of, you can't fill up your column with, what ifs. I mean, you can, but you probably won't have a job that long. But I think that and the other thing is, like, you're doing the same story, essentially. Like, I used to joke about it's pregame, game, postgame.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated that. And I was like, I don't want to do it. I'll help you guys do it. But what I want to do is, why should we care about this? Why do I want this team to do well? Why do I want this team part of my community? Why do I feel excited about watching a game on my TV or coming to I knew people who couldn't afford tickets. They'd come up and they'd tailgate and then they'd go watch at a sports bar, and that was like their family's tradition. Like that fired everybody up. It brought them together. One of the things my dad and I bond over is sports. So there's all these ways in which it's a part of our lives that's important, and that should matter to the people who are running these leagues and running these teams. And it doesn't. What matters to them is protecting their secrets and winning their games and keeping their jobs. And whenever you're trying to protect, whenever you're in protect mode, you sacrifice something.
Mm-hmm.
And what they sacrifice is connection to us, who are ultimately the owners of all of these teams, because we pay them. It's collective money.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I feel like there are players and coaches and owners and people in front offices that actually talk about fans in a disparaging way, in a way that didn't seem to exist once upon a time. It does feel newer to me. Like Durant last year was like, you guys don't get it. We never think about you. Jason Kidd, after the Mavs lost in a playoff game, he said, you guys don't get it. We're millionaires cheering for each other. And it's like, yeah, I know, man, but I don't recall players and coaches speaking about fans in the same disparaging way. That I'm talking college and pro. Yeah. It's like, we know you're going to show up. We know you're going to. Our waiting list is 10 years. Cancel your season tickets. I dare you.
And here's the thing: when the COVID shutdown happened, like, I think I lost sight of the value of fans too. I think it's really easy to do.
Sure.
The COVID shutdown happens, and those teams had to play in bubbles.
Yeah.
And how much fun was that for them?
They talked about it.
They said, this sucks.
Yeah.
We hate it. I mean, especially the MLS. They were like, this is awful.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times you could hear, like, people clicking clipboards and doing office work. It was ridiculous. That is not – we are an integral part of the sports culture of this country.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that we're going to lose. I mean – I think you see it all the time with private equity buying up youth sports. Now I think they're getting involved in college sports. It becomes more and more this elite thing that belongs to just a few people, but it was built on public funds. And this is what I really want people to remember: is it's not. That's why you should, because you're a steward. You don't own this.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you looked at yourself in your life as a steward for things instead of it's my thing and I'm going to extract. If we all thought this is a community asset, this is a thing. Sort of, your dad talked about this when I interviewed him for Making of a Moment.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to do a thing. He wanted it. It was his idea, his dream, whatever. But he wanted it to be a thing for the community. He wanted it to be a thing that they valued, that they came out for, that they fought for. And that's what when a sports team takes root, and that's why people get so devastated by teams moving and that's just the reality and this is a business. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I understand, but like if we checked capitalism just a little bit, and we checked our egos just a little bit, and we said we're stewards, not owners, and these people who may never come to a game still deserve to know us. They still deserve to have a taste of what this camp is like. They still deserve to know and understand what these players are going through and why they can take the lessons these guys are learning and use them in their lives that have nothing to do with athletics.
Yeah.
That is a way for us to give value to each other that is immeasurable. But not enough of the people in charge feel that way. They want to keep their jobs. It's like Congress. They went there. They said to be public servants. They became people who got drunk on power, and they just want to hold on to it.
Yeah. And
so that's the way everybody gets like, let's circle the wagons. We can't, and especially you said, when there's a controversy or something, and you kind of have to spin it, or you have to, we don't want it to get out, or we got to handle it. I will say I have written about some really tough things, right? Arrests of players, arrests of coaches, and every single time when I've had conversations with, and I don't know that I could do the stories that I did back then today, because I don't know that they would trust me. They would just say, like, this is bad press. We're not going to talk to you about it. You just do whatever you're going to do. And the thing the good thing that came from those things is understanding about how these are not black and white issues. You have a situation with a young man at BYU right now who was just arrested for a DUI. And I know he survived a near fatal shooting,
mm-hmm.
right? And if you know something about that situation, and you know something about pain and shame and the struggle to get better and get back on your feet, that's the story we should be talking about. We shouldn't shy away from the tough stuff. We should lean into it. We should have those conversations about grief and about humiliation and failure and resilience. If we don't have those conversations, what do people see? They just see black and white. They see good guys and bad guys. They see failures and they see successes. And that is not the thing we've loved about sports. Is anybody can turn into a villain and anybody can be a good guy. And all we have to do is follow their arc.
Yeah.
They have the chance. We watch them. We see them pick themselves up. There are people I hated that I was won over because of the way they handled themselves and what they did and how they picked themselves up after a failure,
mm-hmm.
and they became something that we should be proud of.
Yeah.
And that belongs to us, and they are robbing us of that.
Yeah.
By cutting us out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I'll set you loose after this because you referenced that, a lot of this will come from the top down if you have an ownership group that gets it. And, Ryan grew up a Jazz fan. The Millers who own RSL get our community, because you referenced private equity. And I can tell you the private equity money that's spilling into college and pro teams. Ask Blazer fans right now. Ask what they're going through up in Portland. They've got a Dallas private equity guy that doesn't give a rip about the community, and they're scared they're going to lose their team. Because one thing is I can tell you that a Dallas private equity guy or a New York private equity guy, you know what he doesn't care about? He doesn't care about your community mm-hmm. or any of the things that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. That's why
he doesn't care about the squishies.
He doesn't care. No, nothing.
No emotion, no connection.
They care about
love.
one. They care about one thing. Yeah. Okay, when they exit, what does that check look like? That's why I think private equity can be dangerous.
Well, but that's why I think unfettered capitalism, like unfettered profit, is dangerous, because then it's all just about how much money can we make? What can we extract from this thing?
Right.
And maybe we should stop looking at things as a resource to be used up and start looking at it. This is our symbiotic relationship. We take care of this thing, and it gives us something beautiful, mm-hmm. right? It brings us together. It lifts us up. It gives us an out. Think of all the amazing moments we had in the World Cup right now, right? And they just about tried to do that. And they're still in a battle for it. And it's going to happen over and over. And there have to be people who are willing to say, this doesn't belong to us. We could make more money, but that's not the point. Mm-hmm. The point is to create something that makes our lives better.
Yeah.
Everybody's lives,
yeah.
whether you can go to a game or not. And that includes storytelling.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not where we're at. There's a very small little percentage of people left, even in high school sports, who see it that way. They see us as a pain in the butt, people to be dealt with or whatever. And we serve two purposes. We're an accountability, but we're also the historians of this thing, mm-hmm. and we're the reason you can have a connection.
Yeah.
You get to know them. You figure out, I remember writing a story about a high school player whose father had been sent to prison, and he had been through a bunch of really tough things, and he was playing for the state championship, and the wife of the coach who was playing against him in that game, the coach told me this, said, "I'm cheering for your team, but that kid, because I think of how much courage it takes at 16 or 17 to do what he does, mm-hmm. to say, I screwed up and I'm going to go back in there and own it."
Yeah.
And what a story.
Yeah.
Like who else did you inspire? Because we're all inspired by the people who are the rescuers, who are the heroes or whatever. But you know what most of us have to do? We have to dig ourselves out of a hole that we got ourselves into. And that's the story we don't tell enough. And that is where sports can be so powerful if they would just embrace it.
Amy, well said. Before you get out of here, do you have anything going on you want our listeners to know about?
Well, hopefully I have a podcast coming out in a bit. But
Very nice.
You can listen to The Letter or Making of a Moment, and you can hear. I mean, Pablo's a great example of somebody who's really open.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't change. I worry sometimes that the pressure of winning and losing and money to be made gets to you. But yeah, so.
Well, great to see you. Thanks for your time as always. Be well, okay?
Thank you.
It's our friend Amy Donaldson from KSL. Want to tell you about my friends at Stansbury Park Golf Course. You can explore Tooele County. Brought to you by our good friends at Tooele County. And if you haven't played Stansbury Park Golf Course yet, what are you waiting for? Everyone's talking about Tooele County's historic golf course, Stansbury Park Golf Course. And for good reason. It's the perfect combo of challenge, pace, and price. Water on almost every hole, greens that roll true, and a layout that keeps you focused and fired up. And get this, you can actually play a full round without spending your whole day there. No long waits, no overpriced greens fees, just pure golf. Play 18 holes for only $45 on weekdays and $50 on the weekends. It's right off of I-80, super easy to get to, and a great reason to explore Tooele County. Whether you're a weekend warrior or just need to escape the office grind, this is your place. Grab your crew, your clubs, and maybe a few extra balls. Trust me on that one. Book now and experience Tooele County golf at its best, and stick around and explore Tooele County while you're there. Stansbury Park Golf, great rates, gorgeous greens, all just minutes away. Totally worth it. Book your tee time now at stansburypark.gov/golf course. That's stansburypark.gov/golf course. Sponsored by our friends at Tooele County. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, final segment of the program for this Monday afternoon. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully you're off to a great start to that work week and had a fantastic weekend. 31 days away from game day for Utah football, about 4 weeks or so thereabouts for when college football is back, and we're high speed ahead to that stretch where you'll have some football to watch pretty much every week until like Valentine's Day. So some good stuff there. I want to remind you that if you are looking for Utah football sound starting today, and quite frankly, starting weeks ago, Big 12 Media Day, going throughout fall camp into the season, ESPN700sports.com is where you go for that. If you're looking for Morgan Scalley, if you're looking for any of the coaches and players, that ultimately is where you should go. ESPN700sports.com is your home. Major League Baseball playoff trade deadline came and went today. The Utah Royals will be back in action on Saturday against Denver. They're third in the NWSL. And RSL will get going in Leagues Cup play tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Mountain Time in Sandy against Tigres. So Jason Christ joined us a little bit earlier. If you're an RSL fan looking for some injury updates, Jay gave those to us. The summer transfer window in Major League Soccer closes September the 2nd. So still a number of weeks for RSL to add to the roster for the playoff push. 5 home games over the next 15 days. There you go. All right. So it's that time of year where we're kind of inching ahead to football here or there. Not a lot of NBA offseason news. As of now, the Jazz have 15 players under contract. My guess is they're done. LeBron was kind of the last domino to fall. He is headed to Philadelphia to play with the 76ers. So a little Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Jaylen Brown, as well as Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe. So that interesting group. Not sure that it really changes the landscape at least all that much. I mean, basically, if you're a Philly, you're planning on a spring window where Joel Embiid has to stay healthy. Bottom line. You know, Porter, I thought it was interesting. Amy in studio, she always leaves you kind of pondering with certain things that she brings up that I think are very fair points. And I'm not ultimately making this a topic about one private equity investment over the other. But, you know, when it comes to whether or not a team or a property is motivated to be front-facing, honest, transparent to the community which they built their backs off of, the private equity stuff in pro sports specifically, like the Blazers story right now, I think it's a big-time cautionary tale. You can look at Tom Dundon. You can look at what he's done. You can look at the threats he's making. He's from Dallas. He's not from Portland. I am one that does believe when it comes to an ownership group for the team in your community, you really want somebody that's from that community, has ties to that community, and cares about what that team, school, whatever it is, means to the community. That's someone that gets it. I actually think it's very helpful.
No, it's helpful, and it's, in my opinion, important too, right? Like we talk a lot about how, and I think that the sports owners here locally, for the most part, are that way. They're fans. Ryan Smith is a fan of the team. But even a guy like Ryan, you've seen the Delta Center, the hockey games, talk about gambling books. We can talk about private equity, and I think they all play a role here. But, yeah, man, there's an authenticity to sports that you got not because it was free in certain cases, right, when you could just tune on your bunny ears on your TV and you could tune into your team, that will get lost on people, right? That's how my grandma and my great-grandma were like huge Jazz fans. They didn't know how to work a streaming setup. They don't know how to do any of this. They tuned in on KMYU or KJazz, whatever it was, on the bunny ears on their TV station, and they got the game for free. They also paid tax money that went to the stadium, that went to the team. If you're a college, a whole bunch of your operation comes from taxpayer money. So not only is it important, but I think there's also some legalities that should be paid more attention to when taxpayers should be benefiting from the things that they're putting money into. And they should know about and have some transparency about things going on with the things that they're paying money towards, right? We've kind of lost a little bit of that, and I liked how you and Amy touched on a bit of it.
Yeah, Amy's points about unfettered capitalism, I think, are something to consider. And look, I mean, we are a capitalist society, and there's an argument to be made that it's been the most successful society in the history of the world ever built. This idea, once upon a time, that was cultivated back in the day, and the American idea that still exists today. I'm not saying I'm anti-capitalist, but the business of sport has grown to the level where the money is something that it did not used to be. I mean, there was once upon a time where the majority of people that owned teams wanted to just buy a team to make it a community asset, and they were stewards of that team. They weren't buying a team to make $1 billion. The old saying was, if you want to know how to make $1 billion while owning a sports team, you better already have $1 billion. But live TV rights, the gambling ecosystem, and simply how big player sponsorships, shoe deals, and such have become, there was a time, once upon a time, where, believe it or not, players needed to cash their paychecks every 2 weeks. They badly needed it. I mean, they were utilizing it to live their life. Then, as money often does when it permeates throughout a thing, it changes that thing. And the motivation behind the scenes is no longer about providing the community with something they can be proud of. It's, you know, your investors, your stockholders, your board. Are their investments safe? Are you making the money that you need to make in order to continue to keep up with your peers? Like, the money that some of these owners are worth now is just wild. It did not used to be that way. Larry Miller owned a few car dealerships. He needed a loan from Spence Checketts in the bank to basically buy the Jazz for like $6 million. And Larry did not do that with the idea that he was going to create the empire he created. He just didn't want the Jazz to lose their team, because Tom Dundon, private equity guy from Dallas, doesn't give a rip about the Portland Trailblazers. I don't care that he won a Stanley Cup with Carolina. I don't. That you can save that argument. And whether it's private equity guys from a bigger market looking at a team that you love to invest in that team, they're not doing it because they love your community. They're not doing it because they love their team. They're doing it because they're expecting a return on their investment. That's how those guys think. And so as this ecosystem has grown to the point where if you're looking to own a team, you better have a B in front of your net worth. I'm not talking about buck. I'm talking about billion. You better have billions of dollars. It did not used to be this way. And what does it mean for you as a consumer, I think, is the most interesting piece, because ticket prices continue to grow. The ability to participate in the community that you love as a taxpayer that helps build these stadiums, your consumer experience has been ripped from you because a lot of people just can't afford it. And as the consumer experience is changed in certain venues and quote unquote improved, you will be asked to pay more for it. And so the gap continues to grow. And it really is a commentary on who we are as the United States. Love it or hate it. It's just the deal. And again, I'm not anti-capitalist. I do think, as is permeated throughout the world of college and pro sports, I think it's changed. I think it's changed a lot. And I think it's just going to continue to change because these live TV right contracts they're just going to continue to go up because we're all sitting watching it at home. And as Amy talked about and Porter's talked about before, the widespread acceptance of being able to place a bet on the team that you either love or the team simply that you're watching has created another revenue stream that these leagues have not just gently embraced. They're live betting odds while you're watching a game. And we're going to catch a break, brought to you by FanDuel. That's just, it's part of the business, and that's changed the way that it's approached. So anyway, hopefully, as I always say, hopefully Saturdays in the fall continue to feel like Saturdays in the fall, because college football is such a unbelievably enticing product, and it's just fun to consume. It's fun to watch. It's fun to attend. I think it's the most unpredictable sport in the ecosystem. It's one of the reasons I love it, and we are just about 4 weeks away from having it back. And, of course, ESPN 700 Sports is a one-stop shop for you if you're looking for Utah football sound. All right, Porter, before we get out of here, what's coming up on a Tuesday edition of the show?
Tuesday edition of the program. We'll, of course, continue talking Utah football as fall camp is underway. Camp Scally, that is. Coach Ron McBride, of course, one of the 4 guys who's run a fall camp up at the University of Utah in the last, 35 plus years.
Wild.
We'll chat with him. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, stops by the program. Brian Dunseth on a match day, RSL in Leagues Cup action. And we'll go from there on a Tuesday.
All right, there you go. So join us for a Tuesday show. We'll say goodnight for this Monday edition. Special thank you to Dan Sorensen, Jason Kreis, and Amy Donaldson. For any sound you missed from the program, go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Download the mobile app and take us on the go. And for what we do in our space every afternoon, check out our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Monday evening. We'll talk to you on a Tuesday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can catch that right here on ESPN 700.